Good morning and welcome to the third meeting of 2026 of the Economy and Fair Work Committee. This morning we will be undertaking budget scrutiny, and we will also be carrying on our Stage 2 consideration of the Community Wealth Building Bill. But before we proceed, I would just like to ask members if we are agreed to take agenda item 5 in private. Thank you very much. I also note that no apologies have been given, which takes us to agenda item 2, with which I am very pleased to welcome Kate Forbes, Deputy First Minister and Cabinet Secretary for the Economy and Gaelic, to provide evidence on the budget bill. She is joined by Colin Cook, Director of Economic Development, Aidan Grisewood, Director of Jobs, Wellbeing Economy, and Kathleen Swift, Head of Director General Finance Unit, Scottish Government. Sorry, that's apologies. That was how it was written in my script, and I just it made me double take because it didn't quite flow. Anyway, thank you very much all for joining us this morning, and I'd like to move straight into questions, and I'd invite the Deputy Convener, Michelle Thompson, to ask the first question.
Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us, Cabinet Secretary and everybody else. I know that the rest of my colleagues will want to get into the detail around your specific portfolio, but mine's a kind of open question. Productivity growth is one of the challenges of our times, arguably none more so at the moment in the face of geopolitical challenges, budget shortages, particularly around lumpy capital. I'd like you just to walk us through how you see the key elements of the budget have gone towards improving productivity growth. And it could well be the trees that you think you've planted that will grow to be the big oaks of future years. And really some of it is for the record. And I'd also like you to reflect on the challenges of ensuring a focus on productivity and growth across all of government and not just in your portfolio. Take it away.
Excellent question. Thank you very much. So that allows me to set the scene for this budget, which I believe is a budget of choices, and it's a tough budget, making those choices even more critical. And the choices I have made, and I will go into the detail of things that perhaps you think I should have done that I haven't done, but that's the nature of choices, is very much to continue to invest in the things that we know are delivering improvements in productivity. So, let's start. Scottish Enterprise, Highlands and Islands Enterprise, South of Scotland Enterprise, and the Scottish National Investment Bank. There is funding safeguarded for those areas precisely because of the brilliant performance we've seen from them in creating jobs, attracting investment, and delivering growth in their respective areas. In other words, we know it works. And every Cabinet Secretary in my shoes has choices at budget as to whether to do new, fancy, headline-grabbing things off on the side in order to make a splash, or to actually double down on the things that we know are working. So that's point number one. Point number two is around international trade and investment. Over the last few days in particular, this has been a feature of our discussion, and we know just how critical exports and international trade are to our businesses. So there's £15.3 million to support international trade and investment. The two other areas I want to talk about are around entrepreneurship. So we have a programme which I believe works well, the TechScaler programme, the investment in innovation. What we've done in this budget is to take that a step forward in response to Anna Stewart's asks around scale-up and in response to the Shane Christorfen report that was published around scale-ups, both of whom say, OK, Scotland, international comparisons say you're doing much, much better with startups. You're actually performing pretty well with startups, outperforming some of your comparator nations. But that's all well and good until these startups have nowhere to go because there isn't the investment in scale-up. So the third area I want to point to is that investment in scale-up and building on the startup. And we know, the data proves this, that the impact of new, emerging, fast growth businesses on productivity is enormous. So they have some of the biggest impacts on productivity gains. And then the last place I wanted to talk to was around what is happening across government. And this is where I'd point to the programme of public service reform that my colleague Ivan McKee largely leads on, but requires investment in digital. And there's a significant investment in digital through my portfolio. That investment goes into Scotland's digital infrastructure. It supports a programme of public service reform. It's basically trying to make the public sector more productive, as well as supporting the infrastructure across the private sector. So there are some examples of where I think this budget is actually built round the things that work and that are most likely to deliver productivity improvements.
Well, I thank you for that textbook answer, exactly as I would have expected. I'd like to hear a bit more about the second part of my question of how you feel that you've been able to ensure that there's been a similar focus cross-portfolio. Obviously, that's a matter of influencing. You know, because you've mentioned the areas clearly under your domain where you're able to influence that, but, you know, skills, infrastructure, investment, and so on would all, contribute. How have you managed to do that, and particularly in the light of what we all recognise are very challenging times for public sector funding, and with limitations and challenges of being able to crowd in private capital? And you may recall the question I asked about the Scottish National Investment Bank when the budget came out. How do you feel that that is? Because, in other words, do all your colleagues have a similar focus on growth?
So from my vantage point, I see a responsibility on me to work with colleagues to encourage them to make decisions about their budgets that are in line with our approach around economic growth. So economic growth is one of the government's 4 aims. So I'm on good soil when making those cases, because it is not just an aim for my portfolio, but it's an aim for all of government. Now, obviously, all of my colleagues will have their own choices to make. But you're absolutely right. Skills, £70 million additional for the colleges sector. That sits alongside the employability fund, which we fought tooth and nail to protect, of £90 million. And so on the skills side, we are certainly working closely with Ben McPherson and working closely with Shirley Ann Somerville in and around some of the economic and activity stuff, which creates child poverty. So on those 2 fronts, we're working quite closely together to try and ensure that they have protected their investments in the areas that I know lead to productivity gains and economic growth. The other one, which is hard to miss because it's so mammoth, is infrastructure. So we know that, again, good investment in infrastructure can lead to significant economic productivity gains. And more than that, having a pipeline. So the pipeline that has been published, which gives more confidence to the construction sector and to investors around what is happening in Scotland, I would say is also a massive area that could increase productivity. And that obviously includes hospitals and schools and so on, but it also includes roads too, which have a significant impact. So there's 2 areas where I actually don't control the vast majority of areas that are most likely to lead to productivity improvements, because skills and infrastructure, or transport rather, are outside my portfolio. But I can use my very effective skills of persuasion to encourage people that these are good things to do.
And I know other people want to come in. Just a couple of wee observations. One, that my understanding was it wasn't 70 million for colleges, it's actually more like 40 million, because the numbers for Fife College for the Dunfermline campus had already been included in that in the previous year's funding. I suspect that's something that will come up at the Finance Committee and is not in your domain for the... and also the infrastructure delivery pipeline, I suspect, is in for a bit of a a bit of questioning. I mean, it's a very good wish list, but some way off being a plan, in my opinion. But I'll hand back to the convener. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. I'd like to bring in Lorna Slater. Lorna.
Thank you very much, convener. Following on from your point, DFM, and that Michelle Thompson raised around the importance of scaling up businesses, I think that's a point upon which we agree. Can you give us, please, more details about how the budget will support scaling up of businesses? Because I know in the past you and I have slightly disagreed on support for startups. It isn't that I don't support startups, but this kind of start quickly, fail fast isn't a model that I'm particularly supportive of. I would prefer the idea of creating businesses with the intention that they last a long time, support communities for a long time. And I think that's where taking already successful business, small Scottish businesses, and helping them to scale up is really the key.
Yeah. So in terms of where the thinking has come from, there's great material in the work by Shane Christoffel. So he published it in November, I believe, or November, just before Christmas. And it sets out how Scotland has performed generally when it comes to small businesses, and then identifies pillars that we should invest in to enable these businesses to grow. And actually, he's fairly open to on sector and also age of business. So you talk about some small Scottish businesses that may have been around for a long time that we should support versus something that's new and emerging. And he talks about talent, so ability to attract talent. He talks about sort of capability and resilience. He talks about governance issues, and he talks about that sort of internationalisation piece. In other words, I would say all of those are the hallmarks of a business that will last. So it's not measuring them on the basis of performance and how quickly they're growing necessarily. It's about what do we need to invest in to make these businesses resilient. And so that sits alongside the work that Anna Stewart's been doing, and you know her background with the Pathways report, all about getting people from underrepresented backgrounds into entrepreneurship. The Pathways Fund has now been running in the south of Scotland for a couple of years, and the recipients of that fund are just all brilliant people that are so embedded in their communities as well. So I would say that in terms of the scale, what we've done is we've identified some funding in the entrepreneurship and innovation funding line, and we will work with Anna essentially to invest in the areas that she thinks are most required to build on the high performance we've seen in startups and support through to scale-ups. But what we've seen generally in people applying for even for TechScaler or for Pathways is such a breadth of business. I mean, the young woman that I met a couple of weeks ago who's applied and received Pathways funding works in the textiles industry. So, you know, it's not very techy in terms of what she's doing, but it's a brilliant business in a local community.
Thank you. This committee has been working for a few weeks now on the Community Wealth Building Bill, and I think there's consensus across the room that this is a really good thing to make sure more wealth is retained within communities and within people of Scotland to help build that wealth across Scotland. One of the things that I've heard frustration about is that the commentary is that our enterprise agencies and Business Gateway are not set up to support cooperatives and other democratic business models. So when people are looking to start a business, these are not presented as options. The advantages of them are not presented. But there's lots of data that shows that those types of businesses contribute more to their communities than traditional profit-based businesses. So if we're going to get, I guess, the best bang for our buck for our investment, do you intend to use the Community Wealth Building Bill to put a shift in how our enterprise agencies support businesses so that we can have this optimum use of funding to support those kind of businesses that really will help with community wealth building?
Yes, and I'll let you question whoever is sitting in this hot seat in the next part of your committee session. But I would point to something that's perhaps a little bit different to what you're specifically asking, but in the same, built on the same principles, which is the investment in social enterprises that is in our, in the budget. So the reason I point to that is a recognition that in the economy budget, we aren't just supporting those sort of traditional models, business models, but in this budget, we have continued to invest in social enterprises, and we have a long-standing relationship with, for example, Firstport and others in terms of supporting them to find, invest in social enterprises across Scotland. And they all have slightly different models as well. So in terms of specifically on cooperatives, you know, there won't be a specific line on cooperatives, but I do think that the budget demonstrates with our support for social enterprises, which has been, you know, safeguarded, that there is an acceptance and a realisation that different business models are a critical part of our economy.
I'd certainly like to see more emphasis and guidance from yourself to the enterprise agencies on cooperatives, because cooperatives don't have to be small and worthy. They can be enormous and generate huge profits. The difference is that those profits would stay in Scotland and Scottish communities. So a bit more ambition on that front, I think, I'd love to see now that we've got the Community Wealth Building Bill. My final question on business, and then I'll move on to skills, is with the breakdown that we've seen in the budget, it looks like for the enterprise agencies, the capital investment's gone up and the resource spending is down. Is that a choice that you've made? Is that something that's been forced upon you? How do you imagine that this is going to affect the work of those agencies?
So it's been a really tough budget. It's a really hard budget. And in my role, as you probably recall, you have to choose a few things to really fight for. And one of the areas I really went into bat for was protecting the capital budget for for enterprise agencies. Why? Because that's the disposable stuff. That's the stuff that they can invest in businesses. So in other words, I think we all want to see a highly efficient public sector. In other words, I want to see every pound spent in the economy costing as little as possible to be spent. So therefore, maximising the capital that these enterprise agencies can have to invest in businesses and sectors was for me a priority. And when it comes to the revenue side of things, you know, our enterprise agencies were already in, as all of the public sector is right now, at looking at how the shape and the structure of their workforce can be fit for the future. But yes, I'm very open about the fact that efficiency means that every penny that's spent in the economy costs as little to the public sector as possible to spend. So that was the model.
That's an interesting approach, because when we took evidence, we have taken evidence a few times from the enterprise agencies, it seemed to be that there wasn't clear data on whether the enterprise agencies were better giving out money or teaching businesses to go and find funding themselves. So it's a sort of the give a man a fish versus teach a man to fish situation. So by cutting the resources but increasing the capital, it seems like we're planning to give out more fish instead of supporting businesses to be able to go and get their own funding. Is that sort of intentional, or?
So I think it needs to be a blend. It absolutely needs to be a blend. So that the years of having lots of grant funding to give out are gone. That is not what we have right now. What we have just now is some brilliant people who are highly skilled at what they do, who can come alongside account managed businesses, and they have that ongoing relationship with them. But when it is required, I think it is essential that the enterprise agencies and the bank have capital that they can invest. Whether that's essentially de-risking an investment, in other words, it's high risk and the private sector won't go near it for various different reasons, or it's a figure that's required to support a business in a bridging context, or even more essential, there's scope for significant income for the enterprise agencies. And one of the changes in this year's budget has been agreeing a number of flexibilities for enterprise agencies, for Scottish Enterprise, to, for example, retain some more of their income. So when they have made an excellent investment, that generates returns, being able to reinvest that to a greater extent than they could previously. So it's not just about sort of the tension between advice versus capital. I think the capital part is essential, and the purpose of the capital will be different for every business. But in some cases, it generates really significant returns to the public sector, which I think is something to be welcomed.
For my final question is on skills. I know Michelle Thompson and yourself have covered this slightly, but in terms of optimizing our spend in that skills space with the Withers review and restructuring of the skills space, how have you made decisions about where that money is most optimally spent, and which elements of the skills landscape are you choosing to invest in?
Yeah. So what's in my budget, rather than in the general universities and colleges budget, is the Employability Fund. And the Employability Fund has been protected at £90 million for next year. So that funding goes on to specialist employability support. So, for example, last year we launched our specialist employability support for disabled people. It also goes to support the No One Left Behind scheme. So that is about reaching those that are furthest from the workplace. And it has also got an approach to support parents back into work. So there's an obvious correlation between workless households and child poverty. Yes, I accept that there are children in poverty and who are in a home where a parent works, but it's guaranteed almost that where there is worklessness, there is greater poverty. So that funding also goes to invest in the parental employability support fund as well, about getting parents into work. We have some really good data on all of this. The difficulty that we face is, I think I've shared this with the committee before, it costs a lot of money to get someone back into work. So it's extremely financially intensive. So it's about working really intensively with people and having that funding now guaranteed for the next few years in the spending review allows local authorities and third sector organisations, which is where the money goes through, to really invest in people for the longer term, because we know from the data that you might get somebody into work in a year and the figures look great, but come back in a year's time, are they still in work? Mm-hmm. So that's what that £90 million goes to. And I can go into a little bit more detail if you'd like, but that's largely what that £90 million is invested in.
Thank you. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you. I'd like to bring in Murdo Fraser. Murdo.
Oh. Thank you. Good morning, Cabinet Secretary and officials. I've got three short questions I want to ask about different areas. But just before I come into that, just going back to the questions on the enterprise agencies. You said in response to Michelle Thompson that the enterprise agencies had given a brilliant performance. Mm-hmm. I'm just looking at the SPICE briefing we've had on the budget allocations to Scottish Enterprise, SOSI and HIE. All of them are seeing a reduction in resource budget in real terms. And you did reference Scottish Enterprise capital budget compared to 25-26 after the autumn budget revision. The capital budget was 95.2 million. In this budget is down to 89.5 billion. If that's the reward for a brilliant performance, what would you be doing to them if they weren't performing well?
Well, they are performing well, and I love the fact that Murdo Fraser has put on the record that I think he agrees that they are performing well in the premise of the question. But, I've said, I think quite openly to Lorna Slater that it's been a really, really difficult budget, and in a really difficult budget, you've got to choose what you're going to back. And for me, when it comes to the impact that Scottish Enterprise and the other enterprise agencies have, it is in what they are able to invest in sectors and industries and businesses. And that's why we have protected their capital. I accept that resource is challenging. It's challenging across the entirety of government, and it is challenging across the public sector. And for a very long time, maybe not this committee, but certainly business organisations have wanted to see greater efficiency in the public sector. And I am proud of the fact that the enterprise agencies have led the way in that regard, and so has Visit Scotland, and that Scottish Enterprise in particular are in the process of understanding how their structure can be fit for the future. So the resource budget is born probably of three things. It's born of the fact that we have made big progress on the financial flexibilities that the Scottish Enterprise were keen to see. Secondly, it's born of the budget settlement. Can't create more resource that doesn't exist. And I think every part of the public sector is grappling with that. And thirdly, it's born of the fact that in terms of the shape of those enterprise agencies, I will continue to double down on the fact that I think we do need to be as nimble as possible and as efficient as possible. And I think businesses that have come through the last few years want to see the economic arms of the public sector being as efficient as they have to be in light of rising costs.
Yeah, sure.
Deputy First Minister, you just there sort of emphasised the need for our enterprise agencies to be nimble and efficient. I think those were your words. Now, I recently met with SPRI, the Basque Country Enterprise Agency. They disperse grants of around 130 million euros. The number of people they employ is 80. You know, in comparison to Scottish Enterprise, which is, and I recognise their restructuring, but over 1,000. I've also recently met with Enterprise Singapore. They employ about 1,000 people, but they also support SMEs. They also undertake the work, which is essentially the equivalent of British Standards Institute for Singapore. Business Finland, you know, very comparable sized country, very comparable sized scope. Indeed, I think they also lead on innovation. They employ fewer people. Do we really think we have kind of the right balance between kind of people and the money going out the door? And actually, critically, even if you don't want to, one of the things we struggle to get out of each enterprise agency was a clear articulation of how much money they get out the door versus how much they spend running themselves. Do you think we need to question those balances and whether we're getting kind of the best bang for our buck from our agencies?
So I think if Daniel Johnson was sitting where I'm sitting right now, Murdo Fraser would have even more exciting questions to ask in terms of budget settlements, because the point is well made. The balance between, this is exactly what I'm saying, the balance between funding that is essentially spent out in the economy versus the cost to spend it. So that's the balance. And you know, I believe that the performance of our enterprise agencies reflects the brilliance of the people who work there. Of that there is no doubt. But I also believe that the enterprise agencies have led the way in the last few years in terms of looking internally at how to be fit for the future. So I think that I don't know if anybody wants to say anything else on the figures, because I've almost accepted the premise of Murdo Fraser's question without challenging the fact that there is an increase in the funding for our enterprise agencies. There's a greater increase for capital, but there is an increase in the enterprise agencies.
Not with spicy.
And well, the figures published in the budget relating to their 24 to 25 outturn, 25 to 26 ABR position and 26-27 budget allocation are not comparable. Comparable is Scottish Enterprise opening budget position 25-26 with its opening budget position 26-27 shows that it will actually receive an increase of £1 million, and that includes an increase in resource of 1.2%. So, more than happy to share those figures further, but that comparison with a capital increase of 8%. So that's the point.
You would note, though, that the government itself presents the budget compared to the budget revision rather than the budget position last year.
Absolutely, but so, I think it's important to see how these budgets have shifted over the year. You can't just disregard what's happened in the intervening period. So I think the point is, that there has been an increase from the opening budget last year.
But it is a relevant comparison because it's the comparison the government actually makes in its presentation of the budget.
It is a very relevant comparison, but it's not the only comparison, is the point I'm making. So when it comes to changes that happen in year, those are quite obviously presented in the budget because they're important and they were previously being disregarded. But my point is, if you compare where we were this time last year with where we are just now, that is also a relevant comparison. I don't know if Kathleen wants to add anything further. Or Colin, you just speak.
I'm happy to say so. Yes, I think the comparison from this year to last year in terms of the capital position of Scottish Enterprise is an 8% increase. Scottish Enterprise and other agencies had significant in-year transfers. For example, I think £23 million to support the offshore wind programme came in at ABR into Scottish Enterprise. So that is what changes the figures and makes that comparison very difficult to make.
Thank you. I mean, we could debate these figures all day. I'm just looking at the figures we have from Spice that shows capital 25-26 budget for Scottish Enterprise is 90.1, and in the budget we've just had presented it's 89.5, which is a reduction, not an increase.
Funnily enough, I recognise neither of those figures.
Right, okay.
So,
Well,
it may be
Scottish
that
Government and the Spice fight it out then.
it may be to do with the combination of capital and FTs potentially. I don't know. I'd need to get my calculator out quite rapidly. But I guess the reason I answered the question the way I answered it is because rather than getting into a tussle about numbers, I think the principle of my opening answer to Murdo Fraser's question still stands around what we are seeking to do, and I'm quite proud of what we're seeking to do in terms of the shape of these agencies.
Okay, can I ask you then about Visit Scotland?
Yeah.
And where that is. So looking at table 9.14 on the budget document, the tourism spend is down from 55.8 million after the autumn budget revision to 52.2. Now, I'm sure you would agree with me, tourism is a vital driver for the Scottish economy. Tourist businesses are really struggling at the moment due to rising cost pressures, not least rates revaluation. Why is the spend on tourism down?
So in terms of the resource allocations that I have in front of me, it's 39.86 in next year in terms of its resource allocation. And then there's also capital that sits alongside that for things like the Rural Tourism Infrastructure Fund. There were two additional funds that were allocated last year for Visit Scotland on a one-off basis. And those were targeted at, it was in reflection of where we were at the time, reflection of some of the challenges that the tourism economy was facing, about trying to distribute essentially visitors over a wider area. So big problems with tourism congestion in certain areas. So £1 million to try and essentially support areas that are less visited. And there was another one-off fund which was about increasing international marketing because of the challenges around their marketing. So those were both one-off budgets, but in terms of the funding here, it continues to support Visit Scotland. They have a key role to play. I think we should also not lose track of the fact that this summer in particular, it's likely to be quite busy, and there's huge opportunities for Visit Scotland with people travelling for big sporting events, for example, or watching big sporting events here to really make a lot of that and support the accommodation and hospitality sectors.
So it's going to be busy, so you're going to cut the budget that's attracting
lot
people
of-
to Scotland. I mean, I suppose my wider point, Cabinet Secretary, is we continually hear from the Scottish Government how economic growth is a key policy outcome, and yet looking at your particular department, I don't see that reflected in the figures we're seeing in this budget.
Well, I do think you see it reflected in the budget. I guess my point would be that Visit Scotland's brilliant work is largely in attracting people to visit the country. And we literally have a Commonwealth Games where people will be actually visiting the country. And we also have people inclined to watch footballing whilst spending money on food and beverage in accommodation and hospitality venues. My point being that Visit Scotland do a brilliant work, and I don't want to take away from that brilliant work, but we also have the potential for a real bonanza this year through other people doing our work for us, like the Commonwealth Games and so on. So in terms of Visit Scotland's approach, they have absolutely got a key role in enhancing connectivity and bringing new investment in Scotland. Another high-performing agency. But I have a budget in front of me, and I need to make that budget go as far as I possibly can. And when doing so, I have to understand where I need to invest in order to increase performance. And I think this year, Visit Scotland will do another outstanding job, but hopefully with a bit of help from other sources.
Okay. One more question, Convener, if I can. Just, we've mentioned tourism. If you're anything like me, your inbox is full of concerns from businesses in the hospitality sector, in the self-catering sector, about the rates revaluation.
Yeah.
And they are extremely concerned about the impact of this on the viability of their businesses should these proposed rateable values be solidified, because some of them are seeing increases 2, 3, 4-fold, and that means they will not be able to survive. There was disappointment that the budget that was announced last week, in terms of the reliefs and the rate poundage, while that would help some, would go nowhere near to addressing those concerns. What more can Scottish Government do to address this really serious issue?
So I accept it's a really challenging issue for so many businesses, and it is a challenging issue every few years for businesses that see an increase in their valuation because of work that is done by independent assessors. I also think, if I think back to the last tone date and where we were as an economy, we're in a very different place. So it makes sense that there has been such significant variation, and that does not make it any easier. You're right to talk about the fact that there has been reliefs introduced in this budget in terms of the 15% relief to retail, hospitality and leisure and the 100% relief for island businesses. The other point that the Cabinet Secretary made, which I took a lot of comfort from, is that if there's additional consequentials that come from what the Chancellor does in and around pubs, that the Scottish Government will reinvest that in further reliefs. So I think that's something to welcome. Murdo Fraser can remind me what his position is on this, but I have heard a lot of people calling for the revaluation to be stopped or suspended, which is a point I had taken some views on from some business organisations, and there was quite a degree of hostility to that view from many quarters, because some sectors of the economy are actually relieved at where their valuation is, and some of them will see an improved picture in terms of their bills. So we know that simply delaying a revaluation, even if you assume an inflationary increase in all the rates, would have been a significant loss of revenue. Now, why is it a loss of revenue? Because businesses would be, would not be paying, and also we know that in engaging with some sectors, they have more to gain. So, with any revaluation like this, it's a question of some that win and some that obviously face challenges.
But just, if I can, Convener, just as a follow-up to that, do you accept that there are legitimate issues with the methodology that's being applied, particularly to a sector like self-catering, where what the assessors are doing is, in the view of many people in the industry, not an accurate reflection of the way that that sector operates and the profitability, and therefore that's the issue that needs to be addressed. And I understand the assessors are independent, but the framework under which they operate is set legislatively.
So I am extremely sympathetic to the some of the criticisms around methodology, and that is why I strongly supported the approach the government took last year, which was for a formal review of methodology, and not just a formal review, but an independent formal review of methodology. Now, I appreciate we then need to obviously receive that and implement that. I'm also conscious that there will be big questions for the next Parliament on reviewing non-domestic rates, implementing any changes to methodology, but also much bigger questions, because This issue comes up a lot in Parliament. England and Wales obviously took an approach to essentially bring the assessors more in-house. That would be a fundamental change of how assessors operate, which I personally don't favour, because I think that the independence of the assessors means that governments are less likely to tamper with and interfere with what they do. But I do accept that non-domestic rates needs to feature quite significantly in the next Parliament.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to bring in Sarah Byack. Sarah.
Thank you, Convener. I'd like to ask the Deputy First Minister what she thinks the key economic challenges are over the remainder of the spending review period, and to reflect on how future budget decisions are going to need to change to support sustainable growth. We've spent a lot of time on the committee talking about the just transition and about the need to invest to protect jobs, but there's also where are the big opportunities?
Yeah. So in a question like that, it's always easier to focus in on what I think are the biggest concerns and risks. So maybe I'll start with the biggest concerns and risks as I see it right now. There's probably there's three I would point to. One is I answered a question yesterday on what the proposal around new tariffs might mean for business. We know that the whisky industry has lost about 1,000 jobs. We know that it's costing them millions every month. And we're now talking about the risk of increased tariffs on top of what they were already grappling with. And that level of uncertainty alone makes it almost impossible for businesses to plan. We are a small nation. We rely on export. We rely on international trade. We are dependent on high-performing sectors that are disproportionately affected by global headwinds, etc., all of which you know. So the big issue for us is going to be, I think, how to invest in new markets and support trade to new markets. Now, some of that might be quite uncomfortable, and some of that might run counter to what some parties in this Parliament believe that Scotland should or should not be doing, particularly around international trade. But I think it's now becoming a bit of an existential risk for us if we do not build some of these strong links. And there's a lot of interest. You know, just before Christmas, we hosted the first global Investopia from the United Arab Emirates here in Scotland, where we showcase some really exciting Scottish businesses. But it's going to take just a real intention to work with new markets. I think the second risk is the continued increase in costs. So again, looking at where inflation's gone this morning and some of the challenges that remain around energy costs, it's really challenging. And I therefore don't think government should be adding additional costs. So whilst I'm very much in favour of us doing the right thing and obviously ensuring that regulation makes sense, I just think looking at the burden of costs that businesses could potentially be carrying over the next few years, I think the next Parliament needs to really carefully consider how they add to or remove from that burden of cost. And the last one was in and around key sectors that have the most potential to grow the economy and really backing them. So you talked about the just transition. We have a huge opportunity with the supply chain that comes from offshore wind, but that supply chain will not get orders if the offshore wind industry doesn't get through the various gateways they need to get through around consenting, auction rounds and grid connectivity. So if there was anything that both governments could do to just say, look, this is the greatest opportunity to create jobs, support local economies, let's absolutely back it. We'll do our level best around rapid consenting, obviously making sure it's right, but rapid consenting, and we need ever more projects to get through auction rounds. And whilst I very much welcomed in auction round 7 last week, 2 Scottish projects getting through, it hasn't dealt with the transmission charging issue for some of the more expensive projects, which is where the real value lies. So sorry if that was a bit broader than you were anticipating, but I think those are 3 risks and 3 opportunities that could remain as risks if we don't deal with them.
It actually lets me come into my supplementary question even better than I had imagined.
And we hadn't even prepared.
Scotland, massive missed opportunity, and your points about investing, a huge opportunity. So basically, the planned capital use 2025-6 reduced from 341 million to 153 million. Some of the money went into resource spending. Isn't this a massive opportunity for us to actually invest in the sector? You've talked about there are challenges, but if you look at it, only 4 out of the 29 companies that own ScotWind developers are HQ'd in the UK. That's not even going to look at Scotland. Then you've got other European countries, Ireland, Sweden, Denmark, and then regional governments in Germany and Belgium actually own projects in ScotWind. Couldn't we take equity stakes in there and generate income? And you've started off quite rightly talking about infrastructure, productivity and skills. If we actually made those projects deliver fair work principles and support supply chain initiatives, wouldn't it be a win-win all round? So is that something you could actually advocate going forward? Because the work done by Future Economy Scotland last year basically said it was a massive economic missed opportunity, and it's something that we could just get on and do, take those equity stakes, make profits, but also make sure that you're building, you're using the supply chains and you're recruiting people.
Absolutely. I'm somewhat distracted by the choral soundtrack that is...
I blanked that out, I couldn't hear it.
Oh, it's outside. It's outside. Sorry, forgive me. So there's a lot. Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. I was just wondering where it was coming from. Sarah, there's lots to your question. So I think you started with how we're spending ScotWind money. So let me just talk about that. So last year was a really big year. We've obviously committed we've committed £500 million over 5 years to invest in developing the supply chain that is required for offshore wind. The argument being that in previous renewables revolutions, we haven't done as well to de-risk the supply chain investments that are required up front, so that when these projects get over the line, they then have a supply chain to actually draw from and to place contracts with. So what we've done with that £500 million is make very substantial investments. Last year, £150 million, and that was funded from capital that is raised through ScotWind. So actually, it's a great example of recycling. Secondly, I do reject, I'm afraid to say, the suggestion that it's a missed opportunity. And I reject it because I think those that focus only on revenues that were directly raised from the leasing miss the big opportunity with ScotWind, which was the commitment that every single successful bidder made to investing in the supply chain and investing in the economy. And I know that a pound that comes back to government is not half as valuable as a pound that is directly invested in the supply chain. I know you want to come back in, but maybe I'll just give... So, invest in the supply chain. Now, all of them at the time, 2021, 2022, committed to about £1 billion of investment in the supply chain into per gigawatt. Now, my understanding is that in terms of my colleagues, I hear them talk about £1.5 billion. So that's obviously increased since then. But it was in light of the far more costly, and as we're seeing, that suggestion was true, the far more costly deployment of ScotWind mirrored with our desire to see an investment in the economy. And then the third area was around, I think you said, wouldn't it be more valuable if they invested in the supply chain and in jobs? Yes, we have pushed our powers as far as possible in terms of compelling an investment in the local supply chain. So there are limits to what we can require around local content. A lot of these issues have been well covered in and around the Alexander Dennis situation and around other situations, but we have compelled as far as we can using a number of different mechanisms to compel the investment in local content. There are questions in around penalties and what we can't do around penalties, but that's an issue that could be resolved between the UK government and ourselves. But that investment. And lastly, I would say if you look at the Green Freeports, what we did there around fair work, which is what you were talking about, we have led the way, and other free ports have now followed suit after Labour came into power, have followed suit in replicating what had already been implemented in the green free ports in Scotland around Fair Work.
So 2 things to follow up on. The first is that you didn't really address the issue about potentially taking equity stakes, which would use existing funding that the Scottish Government has got and then getting resources coming back in that you can reinvest, and also would empower you to actually go further in terms of making those decisions about where you get your supply chains, where you get your manufacturing done.
Yeah, so we have Scottish National Investment Bank are doing that to an extent. So obviously they invest and they invest in equity, and so they have invested in some of these supply chain or power generation schemes. So that's probably the primary route. We also then are able to, they're able to retain essentially the income that they generate from those equity stakes. Again, I'm going to cast my mind back to 2021 when this point was put to me frequently. And I think at the time, I would point to the argument that at the time, Scotland's capital budget was about £5 billion. And at the time, we had 25 gigawatts agreed through leasing, with each of them promising £1 billion per gigawatt. That would have been £25 billion of promised investment in the supply chain, which is 5 times more than the annual capital budget of the Scottish Government. So I'm very sympathetic to the notion of taking equity stakes. I think you need to make the arithmetic work out, just in terms of capital budget that we have, and that's why the Scottish National Investment Bank can do things at the scale that they're doing. They've obviously got a 200 million.
Useful to get that feedback, because actually it works for other companies, countries, and that point about using the capital that's been delivered, 341 million down to 153 million. There is money there, but we're not spending it and we're not reinvesting it.
Well, we are. I absolutely. This is why I absolutely reject the suggestion we're not reinvesting it. Last year, 150 million pounds was pledged to invest in the supply chain of these companies. So we are absolutely reinvesting it. We're reinvesting it through enterprise agencies and the bank, and where it's appropriate, the bank could take an equity stake. We talk about other countries versus us. I'd be really interested to know what the annual capital budget is of some of these other countries, because I would venture a guess it's somewhat larger than £5 billion a year.
But just even talking about the amount that came in from ScotWind and why we don't spend it all. There's a debate about could you generate more income from it. I'll park that for now, but even just not spending the money that's coming in.
But we
so
are.
I would like to see a detailed list from SNIB about equity stakes that have been taken, because that's not in our briefing, and there's still that issue about not spending the money that has already come in.
Well, we will
elsewhere.
draw Scottish National Investment Bank's attention to this. Obviously, they're independent of me, so I don't tell them what to do, but I'm sure they can take into account what they've heard in terms of these exchanges. But I would very, again, reiterate the point that £150 million of the £500 million that has been pledged is being invested in the energy transition in these businesses, and that will generate a return. So actually, I guess I'm agreeing with the principle that you're outlining. I'm just disagreeing that you can do that at the scale that maybe some other countries do.
Okay, just think it's a missed opportunity, given that we don't have anything in those projects and other countries are going to get the resource out of our natural environment.
Yeah, but it makes, I'm really sorry, it makes absolutely no sense. You cannot invest. If the funding was generated by these businesses when they bid for the leases, okay, so that they're generating the funding, you cannot simultaneously take an equity stake in the companies that have just bid for the leases. It's just a question of timing. What you can do is then take the funding that was raised through the bidding on those leases and reinvest it in the projects that come after the initial leases, which is what we're doing with the £500 million that has been pledged to the supply chain. And the examples I would point to are Ardesir. I think Pentland as well, although someone can correct me. Ardesir, we've got Kishorn. That's all funding that's been reinvested that came from the leasing rounds. But you couldn't have taken an equity stake in the companies themselves who were at the point bidding with the money that they were pledging to spend.
No, you need to plan ahead, don't you? You can't
But
just
you-
do it.
you
And the other
can't do
thing
it.
is, the other thing I just wanted to finish on is, you didn't
I mean,
mention Berwick Bank, and we've got a huge
If
opportunity.
we can make the
We do have a
question
huge opportunity.
brief, because I
I'm
was
stopping
keen
at
to
that
try and
point.
finish as close to 9:30 as possible, and I've got another two members.
stopped.
So if you can, if you want,
Yeah, my last point was Berwick
Okay.
Bank, Portleaf. I'll stop on that point, it's not happening yet.
what is there a question?
No, just a reflection on, the Deputy First Minister
Yeah.
mentioned some of the projects that
Yeah.
are actually going to
Okay.
have, and I've just mentioned the fact that we've not heard anything about the Berwick Bank project and the potential for building the turbines in Scotland, in Leith.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. You're great, good example of getting through consenting, getting through auction rounds. They've got some issues just still to resolve, but that'll be up to them. And a huge opportunity in terms of supply chain. And what we need to get is the manufacturers over the line, one of which is currently caught up in a international security question.
I've had indications from both Willie Coffey and from Stephen Kerr that they'd like to, and indeed Kevin Stewart. So I'll bring them in that order. Willie.
Thanks very much, Convener. Good morning, Deputy First Minister. I wonder if I could ask you just one question. How does the budget help to address the plight of our high streets? I notice in the budget there's a regeneration budget line that has dropped, it has been cut. And the issue goes beyond the rates issue that some members have raised already. It's wider than that. We see retail leaving town centres and going to business parks. People shop online, and that puts our retail in the high streets under severe pressure. And the level of rent and rates for the main streets in our town is beyond the business bonus scheme that we have introduced over recent years. So what could the Scottish Government and partners do to try to help turn around the plight that our high streets are facing?
Yeah, and it's been a feature, hasn't it, of our debate over the last few years with the enormous growth of online in particular. And so I think with our budget, it's understanding areas that you can influence and areas that perhaps you can't influence. It's one of the reasons why I'm so supportive of trying to support these high growth small businesses, because if you look at the impact that they have, particularly on local economies, it far outstrips what has happened. I think also it's empowering local partners to take action. So in my own Highland Council, in my own town of Dingwall, the council have very recently refurbished and made available 3 or 4 new units. And considering those units were lying derelict for years, they were really taken aback by the level of interest in using these units. So that could be 3 new businesses occupying those units now. Point being that those kind of interventions are best done, I think, on a local level, and they're best done by local authorities that see the value of the economic opportunity.
Can you see from our point of view that the budget line shows that the budget's almost cut in half?
Is this
For
regeneration?
for the regeneration budget, it's almost
and
cut in half.
Regeneration. So we have continued to obviously fund a regeneration. The first year of the capital spending review includes a spruce income of £12 million, which was the repayment of a final outstanding loan, which was supported with investment of £12 million through the Building Scotland Fund, and that's expected in 26-27. So I don't know, Aidan, if you want to say any more of that.
Just that because it's income that's factored in for the year ahead, that reduces the overall number, the headline number. But in terms of spending power, that 12 million is there too. So I appreciate that there's still a reduction, but it's just not as big as the headline figure makes out because of the spruce income.
Okay, in the interest of time, Daniel, like other colleagues.
I'd like to bring in Stephen Kerr.
Yeah, can I ask the First Minister some very quick questions and maybe just go through a number of different issues very quickly,
Well,
just to tie up some loose
As long as
ends?
that number of issues is relatively
I'll be
contained.
very quick, very quick.
Good.
Alexander Dennis, you mentioned Alexander Dennis. So how much of the 4.1 million has been drawn down by Alexander Dennis?
I don't think anything yet. Not at the present moment. Because, you know, it only gets drawn down when they can evidence their orders.
Right, okay, so where are we in all of that? I mean,
Well, that would be a commercial decision for them, and I'm afraid I'm not going to go into detail of where they are
Okay.
with the orders, but we remain very confident because they remain confident.
We had a discussion earlier about the enterprise agencies.
Yeah.
I mean, Scottish Enterprise in particular has had a 3.4% cut in real terms on their revenue as a resource budget. So my sources inside Scottish Enterprise tell me that the effect of that is, on the basis of last year's salary increases, which have to be calculated into this, that they're going to make redundancies. So this is a very general question, but in terms of Scottish Enterprise, 3.4% reduction, Highlands Enterprise, 4.6% reduction, this is real terms, and SOCI, 4%. How many of the 11,000 jobs in the public sector that the government are going to cut in order to be able to balance the budget do you expect there to be from these agencies?
So,
And what impact will that have on funds?
So Scottish Enterprise are currently engaging with a restructuring process, and that, I think, is public knowledge.
Is there a number in mind? though?
That's for them, and I don't believe they go in with that approach. I believe they go in with an approach of what do we need Scottish Enterprise to be doing, how do we make it fit for the future, and they are obviously engaging in conversations with people. So no, I don't have a number because there isn't a number.
Right. Presumably there must be a number because people inside Scottish Enterprise know that there are going to have to be redundancies on the basis of this.
Yeah, so
third
I
year
accept that
of
there's a
real-term
restructuring.
cuts.
There's a restructuring process.
All right.
But the suggestion of, you know, have we given them a number? No, we don't give them a number.
Employment. I've got very
Yeah.
quick questions on employment. Employability. Do you have statistics on the employability funds and programmes that you've cited
Yeah.
a few times this morning?
We do.
Do you have statistics on the number of people that have gone through those programmes and have then gone into full-time work?
We do.
Can you share those?
Happily.
Brilliant.
We've got brilliant data on it.
Excellent. Scottish Child Payment.
Yeah.
So one of the concerns I've raised quite frequently over the last while has been the cliff edge on the Scottish Child Payment in terms of encouraging people to take promotions, salary increases, different jobs in order to move out of what that does then, because of the cliff edge, is they lose all of their benefits. That is a disincentive for people in terms of employment. Is that a concern that you have? And if it is, what discussions have you had internally to try and change away from the cliff edge?
Yeah. It's not a concern that I have to any great extent right now, but it could be concern. It could be a concern if so. We have to keep an eye on it. But right now, we're not seeing, unless my colleagues tell me otherwise. I don't believe that we see this as we're not getting lots of feedback on this being a particular issue. You would expect it from employers, for example.
Yeah.
If an employer is telling me, so-and-so did not proceed.
Yeah.
And the reason I make that point is because in the last year in particular, we've done so much work in and around economic inactivity. So with brilliant employers who are trying to retain those who are most at risk of leaving the labour market in work.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that category you're talking about are in that category.
So I do get that feedback
Okay.
from employers, particularly when it comes to asking people to work extra hours. In other words, overtime.
Okay.
People are reluctant to take overtime because
Do you have that in a
we should-
shareable format? Can you share that?
Let
Can
me
you
see if I-
anonymise it?
Let me see if I can, because
Okay.
that's on the basis of conversations I've had.
Yeah, I'd be quite interested in
So
that.
it's not data in the sense that I've got something to share with you.
Yeah.
It's anecdotal, but it's quite widespread. The idea that when people are offered a few extra hours of work, they say, oh, hang on a minute, that means that I would be at risk of losing this amount. And it's, I mean, there is no tapering effect. I mean, it's just all or nothing. And I think that is a concern that we should have. And my last question, I promise, although there are many others one could ask, is about the freeze of the high advanced and top rates of tax. Now, there's been a lot of economist commentary about the impact that has in terms of Scotland's attractiveness as a place to move to, particularly high worth workers. They're already going to pay, they're already paying higher rates, but now, of course, because of the freeze, that's even more. And more people are going to enter into these top brackets. Is that a concern you've got in terms of the attractiveness of Scotland as a labour market? And again, have you had conversations with colleagues, and is it something that we will see some action on?
So about 3/4 of taxpayers are expected to be unaffected by maintaining the higher rate threshold at the same level. The second point I would
Which level did you mean?
this the higher rate.
The high rate.
The higher rate.
So the more people aren't going to fall into that?
Well, 74% is the figure that we expect to be unaffected.
That's
by
still a
maintaining.
lot of people.
It is, but it's 3/4 of people that are unaffected. And for the last almost 10 years, it has become a recurring question, so at least it's expected, about the behavioural impact of the
Yes.
tax decisions that we take. We obviously have that HMRC data now that runs up to about 2 years ago, which demonstrated that in every budget, when mostly Murdo Fraser, I'll be honest, was telling me it was going to have a devastating behavioural impact, that HMRC data proves that that wasn't the case, because there was ongoing inward net migration to Scotland, because people make decisions for more than just income
People in
tax
those
positions.
brackets.
But we've always accepted that we need to keep it under review, and we need to make sure that we are taking a very fair approach. I do think that what the Labour Party have done in England has also set a different context for the tax decisions that we take in terms of their own position around freezing. And actually, I think Rishi Sunak did that as well in terms of freezing, but I can't recall
I'm not saying,
precisely.
so my
I'm
point
not saying
you're
is,
the only government that have done it. I'm just saying that we have got higher burdens of taxation
so my
than
point
people
is
that
just
are
that
earning.
it's a divergence that we keep under review. And so decisions taken by the UK government are also taken into account. But we do keep it under review. I suppose the short answer to your good question is that we keep it under review.
But it's a concern you've got.
We keep it under review. At the moment, it's not a concern because of the data that we are seeing, but we keep it under review.
Right, okay. Well,
Thank
I think
you
there
very
are lots
much.
of people outside of government, obviously, that have lots of concerns about the effect it has on the Scottish labour market.
Yes, thank you very much. I'd like to bring in Kevin Stewart.
Thank you, Convener, and good morning, Deputy First Minister. The government pledged £500 million over 10 years for the North East and Moray Just Transition Fund. Does that pledge still stand, that £500 million over 10 years?
Yes,
Thank you.
it does.
There has been less spending in the first few years. Do you see that accelerating as we move forward?
Yes, £85 million since launching in 2022, 28 projects across the region, 230 jobs created and safeguarded, opened up more than 750 training places via skills-focused projects, and attracted over £30 million in private investment and £4.7 million in public and third sector investment from £43 million of the initial Just Transition Fund investment. So some strong figures there, and those are based on an independent evaluation in the first 2 years of the fund, and that will continue to grow.
I take it that the Scottish Government will be continuing to pressure the UK Government in matching that funding in order to get the transition right for workers in the North East of Scotland.
We live ever in hope, Kevin Stewart.
So do I, but I'm a little bit more cynical. One of the things which has been of huge benefit has been the Just Transition participatory budgeting, which has allowed community groups to get involved and to fund projects which, of course, help in the transition, but also, in lots of cases, create good employment. One of the bugbears is that all of that is capital money. I wonder if the government would consider looking at some revenue inputs here, which I think could lead to greater community participation and an increase in community jobs.
I'll certainly take that away. I think you'll see from my budget that resource is particularly challenging compared with capital, but I will certainly take that one away.
I wonder if the Deputy First Minister could talk to other colleagues to look at the cross-cutting nature of some of that work, to see if other budgets could come into play in terms of finding that revenue.
Happily.
Thank you. My final question is around about the Scottish National Investment Bank and its role in the just transition. Do you think that, as it stands at the moment, SNIB is investing enough in terms of support for companies that are moving to a just transition position, manufacturers in particular, but also the supply chain? There have been some very good investments, but I'm not entirely convinced that this area is being considered enough.
So, obviously, the Just Transition is one of their core missions, one of their 3 core missions. And furthermore, I would say that looking at the level of investment, particularly in the supply chain in the last 2 years, has been quite impressive across enterprise agencies and the bank. So actually, Highlands and Islands Enterprise have been one of the biggest recipients of some of that supply chain funding, that £500 million funding. The bank has also made substantial investments, and obviously defending the investments that they make, I will leave to them because of their operational independence. But I think just that level of investment across the board has been very encouraging, and I'd like to see more of this coming year.
Thank you. That's probably the briefest I've ever been, convener.
It is, and we thank you for it, Mr. Stewart, although we always enjoy hearing from you. In closing, I just wonder if I could ask 2 final questions, one very specific and one more expansive. In terms of the specific, Deputy First Minister will recall in the autumn I raised with her the point around thresholds for full accounts for charities, given her remit on social enterprise. I note that actually the Scottish Government raised the threshold to £1 million at roughly the same time. I don't know if we should take credit for that or it was just a coincidence. But that notwithstanding, £1 million is still considerably lower than it is for private businesses. So for private businesses, the threshold is turnover of £10 million, a balance sheet of £5 million, or 50 employees. Just given your remit, is this a point that we keep under review? Because I think we should be encouraging social enterprises, third sector, and that does seem to be a disparity.
Well, I hope, convener, that the committee can take comfort from the fact that I listen to their suggestions and then act promptly. And on the question of moving from £1 million to £10 million, having now set that standard of acting promptly, we will go away and see what else can be done.
Thank you very much. I can't ask for more than that. On the more expensive side, this is probably the last time that you will appear, certainly before the Economy Committee, regarding a budget. And I think one of the things that's striking, I think both for this committee generally, but certainly even given some of your answers, that actually when you look at the broad range of quote-unquote levers available to Scottish governments, many of them actually exist outside the budget lines that belong to you. You've named infrastructure, skills. I wonder, as you reflect, as we're in the sort of almost last 100 days of this Parliament, do you think there's a need to either think about formally restructuring some of those things? Do some of those things need to come into the economy portfolio, or should we even think about ways that they can be linked to it? So, for example, could skills or should skills be in the economy portfolio? And if not, I mean, given the debate we had last night, should the budget line belong to the economy portfolio, given that delivery, now that it's going to SFC, will probably be in education in order to maintain that economic link? What are your thoughts about actually how we make the proper linkages between the things that actually deliver economic growth, such as infrastructure, skills, also planning, housing, the things that actually can drive growth in the economy?
So I don't think there's a perfect science to this at all, because I have had responsibility for finance and the economy at times, because there was an understanding that, listening to questions about tax and so on, that tax was so integral to the performance of the economy that they should be linked. And that's not the case. There have been times where skills in the economy have also been linked because of the reflection of the importance of skills. There's been times, I believe, when economy and infrastructure have been linked. So there's been various different iterations, and, I also think there's a strong argument for economy and energy to be linked, because energy is such a critical driver. The danger and the risk is that you end up with too much responsibility and too many junior ministers doing a lot of the work, and therefore you're not able to get your teeth into it. So I do think that we need to basically be responsive to the issues that become the primary issues. So for the last year and a bit, skills and energy, I would say, have been the biggest issues. I can't predict what will be the biggest issue next year. Maybe it will be issues of international security. And suddenly it's a very different issue that becomes dominant. I think the key is for Cabinet as a whole to understand that we are all in the business of economic growth and prosperity. So the example I used to use when I came back into government 18 months ago was around Marine Scotland. Mm-hmm. Is Marine Scotland tasked with economic growth and prosperity or not? Okay, it isn't in its remit like it is for enterprise agencies, but when we were looking at consenting issues, it suddenly becomes really critical. Yeah. So I think it's about that cabinet-wide understanding. And mercifully, I will leave it to the next government to determine what that looks like. But could I also thank the committee for making every appearance such an enjoyable experience? And, you know, I guess having done committee performances, because that's what it is, isn't it? Committee appearances over the last 6 years, I always value those committees that I know will actually ask me difficult questions, because sometimes you put in all the preparation and then come and only get asked really simple, easy political questions. And so I want to pay tribute to the committee and for asking me difficult questions and probing questions and revealing just how well informed they are with the quality of the questions. So hugely grateful to all of you for all of these enjoyable appearances.
Well, indeed. And if I knew that the Deputy First Minister was wanting difficult questions, I might have taken a different approach. But no, can I thank her for her contribution, indeed, over successive committee examinations, both in this committee and indeed others that I've sat on, and indeed for her answers this morning. I think they've been very interesting and instructive. And can I thank both her and indeed her officials for appearing before us this morning. With that, I think could we just have a brief suspension just to allow us to rearrange the room and for me to get my papers in order. Just 2 minutes. Thank you very much and welcome back. Before we move on to our continuation of stage 2, we need just to briefly move on to agenda item 3, which is consideration of an item of UK subordinate legislation. I refer members to papers 3 and 4. The Deputy First Minister wrote to the committee on the 12th of December to give notice of the Scottish Government's proposal to consent to UK regulations. I invite members to comment on the Scottish Government's notification. Oh, I have one indication, or two indications, Lorna Slater and then Murdo Fraser.
Yeah, I note the Scottish Government's discomfort with some of the legislation in this space because it is underlying legislation for something that the Scottish Government has not consented to. But this particular piece does seem to be sort of small enough and technical enough in detail that, yeah, I understand the Scottish Government's reason to consent to it.
Thank you very much. Murdo.
Yeah, it's really just to get a clarification on the record from the Minister. My understanding, looking at the instrument and the background proposals, is that this will have no impact on UK service providers. It will only apply to those who are overseas seeking to trade in the UK, but perhaps the Minister could just put that on the record.
Mr. I'm afraid, as keen as I'm sure Ivan McKee is to speak to this, he's not actually here to speak to this item. This is just a formal... we're just sort of allowing the Minister to get comfortable in his seat before we go on stage 2.
You broke into cold sweat at that, I saw.
Indeed, but I think that point is on the record, and I'm sure the government is paying very close attention to this item on our agenda. Are there any other comments? No. Can I invite the committee to agree to the Scottish Government's proposal to consent to the UK regulations? Great, thank you very much. We now move on to agenda item 4, which is a continuation of Community Wealth Building Scotland. And indeed, I'm very pleased that the Minister for Public Finance is here to participate in that item in our work today. And I also note that he is supported by his officials who are there to support him, but they will not be permitted to speak in the debate. I just remind members that we are aiming to get to the age of stage 2 consideration this morning, but if we are unable to complete stage 2 this morning, we will meet again at 5:30 this evening to dispose of the remaining amendments. I would just, again, I will not repeat what I stated when we commenced stage 2 in terms of the way that we deal with this, but I would just refer that we will be following the marshalled list, and that members should have both that in front of them, the bill, and as well as the groupings, which will give the order in which amendments will be debated. And with that, I would like to call Amendment 85 in the name of Paul Sweeney, grouped with amendments 118, 60 and 25. Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Convener, and I move that Amendment 85 and its associated Amendment 118 form part of the bill. The purpose of this amendment and its associated amendment is to ensure that a Community Wealth Building Action Plan must include an assessment of economic leakage from the local area to which the plan relates, and the measures that the Community Wealth Building Partnership is taking or intends to take to address that leakage. So the amendment seeks to minimise leakage of wealth from local areas and ensure that relevant public bodies take meaningful action to secure and grow local development and the circulation or recirculation of wealth within that geography. When public finances are often pressed as they are, the case for community wealth building is even stronger, as we must try to prevent this sort of leakage happening from local economies and ensure that public expenditure is resulting in wealth circulating and remaining circulating in a local area as much as possible. So an example could be the economic extraction taking place as a result of public subsidies feeding unsustainable land price increases, and investor land ownership in Scotland is a case in point. If we also look at foreign direct investment, which the government often cites in terms of just pure projects, without any further granular analysis of those foreign direct investment projects, they may, if not properly scrutinised, result in greater flows of profit extraction from the Scottish economy in years to come. And indeed, that over-reliance on foreign capital has and could lead to further dilution of Scottish democracy, as investors' leverage could be exerted if they're threatened to move investments elsewhere if demands aren't met regarding, for example, tax breaks, erosion of workers' rights, capture environmental standards, or any other legislation that may reduce rates of profit extraction. So it's a good preventative measure in that regard as well. And whilst the latest publication of gross national income figures is welcome, there was a significant gap between 2017 and 2023, and as well as a 2-year lag time for the latest data, which is a significant issue in terms of data analysis and understanding the gap between gross national income and gross domestic product. So I think the Scottish Government should also commit to publishing GNI figures more readily, and perhaps this more granular local data picture could also assist in that regard. So I think if properly resourced and collaboratively delivered, community wealth building action plans represent a significant opportunity for local authorities in particular to help in the national effort to secure and grow local economic development and a true circular economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to call Richard Leonard to speak to Amendment 60 and any other amendments in the group.
Thank you very much, Convener, and thanks for the opportunity to move these amendments. Amendment 60 is an attempt to change the status of the measures that are set out in the Community Wealth Building Action Plans from measures that may be covered to measures that must be covered. I think that it's important that the action plans must include public procurement, must include land ownership diversification, must include promoting equality, employment opportunities and so on, and must include promoting employee-owned businesses. I think this reflects two of the recommendations that the committee made in its Stage 1 report. The first one, paragraph 54, page 10 of the committee report, where the committee talks about the need for a more consistent adoption of community wealth building. So I think having musts rather than mays points us towards a more consistent adoption. And also I reflect in paragraph 69 of the committee's report, page 13, where it's in the context of the statement that needs to be prepared by the Minister. I do think the spirit transfers across to community wealth building action plans, where the committee says it recommends that the bill should clearly articulate what this statement will include rather than what it may include. So the Amendment 60 is an attempt to introduce that approach to action plans. It's also an amendment which is supported by Cooperatives UK.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leonard. I'd like to call Lorna Slater to speak to Amendment 25 and any other amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. Amendment 25 would seek to ensure that community wealth building action plans are rooted in community priorities. Community wealth building action plans should be aligned with community action plans, local place plans, and local development plans. This seems a basic step to ensure coherency, and I'd like to hear from the Minister that if he's unable to support this amendment in legislation, whether he will commit to ensuring that this is present in guidance. Again, in this group, Paul Sweeney and I have similar intentions but different approaches, so I won't support Amendments 85 or 118, but I'm happy to support Richard Leonard's May to Must Amendment 60. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much. I've not received any other indications from members, so I would just like to invite the Minister to respond on behalf of the Government.
Thank you, Convener. And the Government position on these four amendments is that we cannot be supported. Amendment 85 seeks to create an additional requirement for community wealth building partnerships to assess economic leakage from the local area and include measures in the action plan to address it. Amendment 118 is consequential to the members' Amendment 85 and would either provide that the measures listed in section 5.5 may be used to address economic leakage, or if Richard Leonard's Amendment 60 is agreed to, would have to be used for that purpose. Under section 5.4 of the bill, community wealth building action plans must set out the measures the partnership is taking or intends to take to facilitate and support the generation, circulation and retention of wealth in the local economy. And it would seem to me that retention of wealth in the local economy and the prevention of economic leakage are two sides of the same coin. Further, while everyone wants to see our local businesses grow and access opportunities for growth from public procurement, many goods and services will, of course, need to be purchased in the wider region as or beyond, and as such I think that the amendment is not necessary. This issue is, however, one that could perhaps be explored further in dialogue as we develop the statutory guidance. Richard Lerner's Amendment 60 seeks to amend Section 5.5 of the bill to change the wording as regards the listed measures from may to must. This will create a legal obligation for community wealth building partnerships to include these measures in their plans, rather than afford them discretion to include and prioritise actions and measures most relevant to their local areas. Further, because Section 8 of the bill requires partnerships to implement the measures set in the plan, so far as reasonably practical, Amendment 60 would have the indirect effect of making adoption and implementation of the listed measures effectively mandatory, unless there were practical reasons why they could not be implemented. While the government position is to support a similar proposition linked to the Community Wealth Building Statement by Scottish Ministers, Amendment 21, in my view, this Amendment 60 places too much restriction and prescription on community wealth building partnerships in preparing their action plans where local flexibility is essential, and we therefore cannot support Amendment 60. And we cannot support Amendment 25 in Lorna Slater's name for similar reasons. It would require action plans to be aligned with other listed plans, community action plans, local place plans, local development plans, and I think it should be left to those in the lead in local areas to ensure plans with relevance to each other are aligned, rather than being instructed through primary legislation. I don't want to tie the hands of partnerships as regard to what they can and cannot do in their action plans. Issues of linkage and synergy can more appropriately be explored through development of guidance, and I'm happy to give the undertaking that Lorna Slater sought with regard to discussing how that can be reflected in that statutory guidance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Minister, I now ask Paul Sweeney to wind up and to press or withdraw Amendment 85.
Thank you, Convener. I am disappointed by the Minister's response to the proposed amendments. I don't think they are particularly onerous or difficult. I would assume that the Minister agrees in principle with the idea of gathering relevant data to understand the extent of circulation of wealth within a local economy, whether it's termed as leakage or retention. You know, it's a semantic point, really. These amendments were developed in conjunction with Community Land Scotland, and I think they are laudable and merit some further consideration. A good example, perhaps from the Minister's own constituency, would be Royal Strathclyde Blenkraft Industries, part of City Building, which refer to the Glasgow Pound, the idea of local procurement chains, recirculating wealth and the multiplier effects that has on local economic development. I think having greater visibility at a micro level is helpful in terms of developing policy, and if there is a significant gap in data gathering, whether it's analysis of foreign direct investment projects and how they add value to the Scottish economy, or whether it is generation of local supply chain content, that's useful data for us to drive public policy, and I think placing such measures within the bill, in the face of the bill, is certainly more helpful than having it merely in statutory guidance. So I would be reassured if the Minister would at least engage in the next stage of the bill to try and find a way forward so that that activity can take place as a function of this legislation, because I think it would be in the public interest to do so.
Thank you very much. So the question is that Amendment 85 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not agreed, so there will be a division. Can I ask all of those in favour of Amendment 85 to please raise their hands now? All those against, please raise their hands. And any abstentions? So there are 2 members in favour, 7 against. Therefore, Amendment 85 is not agreed to. I call Amendment 118 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated with Amendment 85. Paul Sweeney, to move or not move?
Moved. Well, actually not moved, because it's pointless actually in the context of this.
So just to confirm that Amendment 118 is not moved.
Yeah, sorry.
I call Amendment 60 in the name of Richard Leonard, already debated with Amendment 85. Richard Leonard, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 60 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are not agreed. There will therefore be a division. Can I ask all members in favour of Amendment 60 to please raise their hands now? All those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 3 members in favour, 6 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 60 is not agreed to. I call Amendment 36 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 46. Lorna Slater to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that the question is that Amendment 36 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
We are agreed. Call Amendment 44 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 46. Lorna Slater to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 44 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are not agreed to, therefore there will be a division. Can I ask all those members in favour of Amendment 44 to please raise their hands? All those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 3 members in favour, 6 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 44 is not agreed to. I call Amendment 126 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated with Amendment 46. Paul Sweeney to move or not move?
Move, Convener.
The question is that Amendment 126 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, therefore there will be a division. Can I ask all members in favour of Amendment 126 to raise their hands now? And all those against? Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 126 is not agreed to. I call Amendment 13 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 46. Lorna Slater to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 13 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask all members in favour of Amendment 13 to raise their hands now? And all those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 3 members in favour, 6 members against. Therefore, Amendment 13 is not agreed to. Call Amendment 14 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with an Amendment 46. Lorna Slater to move or not move?
Not move.
That is not moved. I call Amendment 15 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 46. Lorna Slater to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 15 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask all members in favour of Amendment 15 to raise their hands now? And all those against? And any abstentions? There were 7 members in favour, 2 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 15 is agreed to. I call Amendment 37 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 46. Lorna Slater to move or not move?
Move.
The question is Amendment 37 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask all members in favour of Amendment 37 to raise their hands now? And all those against, please raise their hands. And any abstentions? Yes. There were 3 members for, 6 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 37 is not agreed to. I call Amendment 86 in the name of Rhoda Grant, already debated with Amendment 46, and I believe Sarah Boyack is going to move. Is that Amendment 86? Move or not move?
Thank you, Convener. I'd like to move.
The question is that Amendment 86 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are not agreed. Therefore, we'll divide. Can I ask all members in favour of Amendment 86 to raise their hands now? And all those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 7 members in favour, 2 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 86 has been agreed to. I call Amendment 87 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 46. Minister, to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 87 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. Therefore, Amendment 87 has been agreed to. I call Amendment 88 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 46. Minister, to move formally.
Moved.
The question, therefore, is Amendment 88 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are not agreed. Therefore, we'll divide. Can I ask all members who are in favour of Amendment 88 to raise their hands now? And all those against? And any abstentions? There were 8 members in favour, 1 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 88 has been agreed to. I call Amendment 16 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 46. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 16 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
Yes.
We are not agreed. Therefore, we'll divide. Can I ask all members in favour of Amendment 16 to raise their hands now? And all those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 7 members in favour, 2 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 16 has been agreed to. I call Amendment 24 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 46. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Not move.
Amendment 24 has not been moved. I call Amendment 45 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 46. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 45 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask all members in favour of Amendment 45 to please raise their hands? All members against, please raise their hands. And any abstentions? There were 3 members in favour, 6 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 45 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 89 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 46. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 89 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask all members in favour of Amendment 89 to please raise their hands? And all members against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 3 members in favour, 6 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 89 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 90 in the name of Sarah Boyack, already debated with Amendment 46. Sarah Boyack, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question, therefore, is Amendment 90 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask all members in favour of Amendment 90 to please raise their hands? Thank you. And all members against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 90 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 127 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated with Amendment 46. Paul Sweeney, to move or not move? The question is that Amendment 127 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask all members in favour of Amendment 127 to please raise their hands now? Thank you. And all members against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 members against. Therefore, Amendment 127 has not been agreed to. So Just one moment, I need to switch over lists. Is that right? Amendment? Just making sure I'm reading from the right script. As I've been joking with the clerks, I don't want any Ron Burgundy moments in these proceedings. I call Amendment 17 in the name of Murdo Fraser, group with amendments as shown in the groupings. Murdo Fraser to move Amendment 17 and to speak to all amendments in the group. Murdo Fraser.
Thank you, Convener. I've got two amendments in this group, Amendment 17 and then Amendment 20. Amendment 17 deals with the question of targets in community wealth building plans for the spend in public procurement being spent with local economic operators. Now, this is an issue which was raised with the committee by a number of witnesses who gave evidence at stage one, most notably the Federation of Small Business, who are particularly keen that community wealth building is used as a means of supporting the local business community. In line with the general approach I've taken to the bill, which I don't want to see cluttered up with lots of provisions, it's intended to be a relatively light touch approach. It doesn't specify what the target should be. That's a matter for the local organisation, the local authority, whatever it might be, preparing the plan to set that target. That target might indeed be zero. That, of course, would not be helpful, but the intention is to put something in the bill that will require the setting of a target, which would therefore encourage more public money to be spent supporting local communities. I notice, Convener, you have something, a similar approach in Amendment number 27. I prefer my approach because I think it's much lighter touch than your overly prescriptive approach in Amendment 27. But I think we're in the same general territory, but I think 17 is neater, cleaner, and imposes less obligations on the organisations preparing the community wealth building plan. So I would commend 17 to colleagues, and it does allow the maximum local flexibility as I've outlined. Amendment 20 is essentially a consequential amendment and requires a reporting on this matter. Every community wealth building partnership must, at the end of every financial year, prepare a report setting out the percentage of total spend on public procurement contracts spent with local economic operators and publish that so that is transparent. So I'm happy to move Amendment 17, Convener.
Thank you very much, Murdo. I would now like to speak to Amendment 27 and other amendments that I have tabled in this group. And indeed, as Murdo Fraser points out, it is in a very similar ballpark. I mean, I think one of the things that we were discussing as a committee as we examined this at stage one was the fact that, in essence, this bill does little more at the moment than require the compilation of plans in consultation with others. And I think there was a concern that without any additional steps or amendment, that actually it would be possible for essentially that, for all that was consequent to this. And actually, in order to make sure that actually progress was being made, that we needed to look at steps that could be brought in. And I think there was an interesting kind of interaction between the Minister and some of the members of the committee, both during our stage one evidence, but also in the stage one debate about actually the tension that exists there between, I think, the importance of ensuring that community wealth building is bottom up, and not having centrally imposed targets. So what my amendments seek to do is set out a framework so that at least that there's a consistent methodology so that we are measuring the same things or similar things across different community wealth building plans, and then those plans themselves could actually choose the target, so that you have essentially kind of a consistent measurement framework, but nonetheless maintain local target setting. And I think that is the balance that my amendment seeks to strike. And if it is, in the words of Murdo Fraser, overly prescriptive, I think that's purely because I think it is important that there is a consistent set of measures, and I was seeking to try and develop a set of criteria, or a set of areas that we would want to sort of see monitored on a consistent basis wherever community wealth building approaches are developed. The other amendments in this group are really consequential to that, particularly Amendment 28, which would enable the parliamentary scrutiny of those measures, and Amendment 29, which was would require ministers to publish some sort of report, which is really just about trying to consolidate those and prevent some sort of analysis across it. I recognise that, and I suspect the minister may suggest that 1 year is too short a reporting period. I'm pretty relaxed about that. Likewise, I'm open to consideration about actually what are the things that should be measured. I wouldn't want these amendments to get caught up and dismissed for those reasons, but I think it would be useful to discuss the general principle of having that broad measurement framework within which community wealth building plans could then set their own targets, and then there being some sort of consolidated survey looking at actually how those community wealth building plans are progressing. That, I think, is the central thrust both of my amendments, but indeed I think it's very much in line with what Murdo Fraser is discussing, and indeed more broadly I think some of the discussion that has been happening within the committee and beyond that. And with that, I will close my comments on my amendments. And I would like to invite the Minister to speak to Amendment 101 and indeed any other amendments in the group. Minister.
Thank you, Convener. Amendment 101 in my name brings reporting on community wealth building action plans into line with similar obligations attached to community wealth building statements by Scottish Minister. And this amendment was influenced by the Stage 1 report. I am of the view that reporting on progress within community wealth building action plans is very important, but I do not want to set out too high a degree of complexity and stipulation on the face of the legislation. It's more important to offer flexibility and autonomy to local authorities and other community wealth building partners on how they want to set meaningful local targets using reliable data that can measure progress. And I think the dialogue on producing community wealth building guidance involving COSLA and others is a helpful place to do that. In general, I favour a streamlined and enabling approach to monitoring progress on community wealth building measures, and I would ask members to support that amendment in my name. Looking at the other amendments lodged in this group, I know that issues associated with monitoring and target setting have been at the forefront of members' thinking with regards to this bill, and I welcome the contributions from yourself, Convener, and Murdo Fraser in this regard. The government position is not to support any of the other amendments in this group, but I'll talk through the why separately. But I just want to thank yourself, Convener, Murdo Fraser, Richard Leonard and Lorna Slater for the amount of time and thought committed to framing some of the amendments debated in this group. And I would repeat my offer to discuss the issues around monitoring target setting prior to stage 3. So let me briefly set out some thoughts on a number of the amendments. A key running theme in doing this is the interaction with current procurement policy and law. Amendments 20, 27, 39 and 39A would impose additional or annual reporting requirements, and the requirement for an additional report laid before Parliament would be disproportionate. Authorities already publish annual procurement reports under the Procurement Reform Scotland Act 2014, and adding further statutory reports risks duplication and diverting resources from delivery. Ministers do have the power to specify by order the matters which must be contained in annual procurement reports, and I would be happy to give a commitment to engage with stakeholders of whether it would be appropriate to use this power to address some of these matters. Amendments 17, 26 to 26E and 57 collectively seek to impose statutory targets or reporting requirements on procurement activity, including awards to local businesses, cooperatives, alternative ownership models and measuring spend within or outside local authority areas. And while I understand the intent, imposing statutory targets risks being bureaucratic. Targets are difficult to establish, maintain and monitor, and could undermine flexibility for local authorities and partnerships. But I reiterate my commitment to work with members to find a way of that we can perhaps please. Yeah, sure.
I'm very grateful for that constructive insight, because I think there's a recognition there that there's a balance to be struck. I wonder if the Minister might agree to meeting with those members that have amendments in this group to maybe discuss potential ways forward, because I think we all want to ensure that we can actually ensure that there is progress in community wealth building. Would the Minister maybe agree to such a meeting?
Very happy to do that, Convener, with yourself, Murdo Fraser and others that have got interest in the targets and how we can seek to have amendments at stage 3 to deliver what I think we all want to have, but within the context of what I've outlined, and keeping this as flexible as possible. The Procurement Reform Scotland Act 2014 already provides a strong foundation. It requires authorities to consider how procurement can improve economic, social and environmental well-being, and to facilitate the involvement of SMEs, third sector bodies and supported businesses while treating all operators equally. And Scotland already performed strongly. I'd indicated previously that in the latest data on those reports, fully 47% of Scotland's public sector procurement spend is with SMEs, far in excess of that across the rest of the UK, or indeed more widely across Europe. Amendments 28, 29, 29A, 29B, 68, 108, 110, 112 and 142 relate to reviews and broader reforms of contributory policy areas. Amendment 29 would require Scottish ministers to review the Procurement Reform Scotland Act 2014 and the Community Empowerment Scotland Act 2015 with 1 year of royal assent. This is unnecessary. We have recently consulted on the scope for increasing thresholds in the 2014 Act and lowering thresholds for community benefit requirements. That consultation closed on the 8th of January and responses are being analysed.
Sure. I agree on that point. So I realise I actually didn't effectively cover off Amendment 29. Look, but I think one of in my contributions, I think one of the points that has been discussed, I think quite widely, both when we were taking evidence and indeed, I think more broadly, is that while the Community Empowerment Act has been a step forward, it is a critical tool to essentially developing community wealth building. But I think there are points of frustration that many community groups have found. I think both in terms of, I think the candour sometimes with which public authorities sometimes bring forward information. Example of my constituency was when a site actually fell under 2 titles, not 1, and that was why the bid was rejected from the community group. And I think, and if we're going to advance this, there will be I think points both in Community Empowerment Act and other pieces of legislation which enable communities to take on ownership, which could be improved. So while I recognise your point that this is part of the ongoing work, I just wondered if the Minister might take this opportunity to put on the record an acknowledgement of some of those hurdles and maybe unintended consequences that exist within these bits of legislation, which should be looked at and remedied by an incoming government after the election.
Yeah, certainly happy to look at that. And as I say, there is a process in place to keep those requirements under review. So I take the point that the convener makes. Moving from procurement to tax, Amendment 67 seeks a review of business tax reliefs to support community wealth building. I would say that matters relating to devolved tax should of course be taken forward in tax-specific legislation with consultation to avoid unintended consequences, and the Scottish Government already reviews NDR policies regularly and is undertaking currently a review of LBTT, and we will work with businesses to examine reliefs ahead of the next revaluation in 2029. I absolutely understand the intent behind the members' amendments, and very happy to engage with him in advance of stage 3 around this area. Finally, on community empowerment, while accountability is vital, prescribing rigid mechanisms such as citizens' panels or audits risks turning engagement into a tick box exercise. Guidance and community wealth building partnerships working will achieve meaningful involvement more effectively. The Scottish Government has already considered feedback from the 2023 Community Wealth Building Consultation and the 2019 Scottish Land Commission report, and our focus remains on supporting local authorities to meet statutory duties under Part 8 of the Community Empowerment Scotland Act 2015 and associated guidance, and will keep those requirements under review. And for completeness, the Government will resist amendments 17, 28, 68, 108, 110, 111, 112, 139, 141, 142 and 143 for reasons of proportionality, duplication or practicality already set out. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much. Minister, I'd like to call Lorna Slater to speak to Amendment 26 and any other amendments in the group. Lorna Slater.
Thank you, Convener. My Amendment 26 compels the Scottish Government to set targets. This text is based on the approach used in the Circular Economy Bill in that it doesn't put any target on the face of the bill, but ensures that some will get set, which this was a significant concern of this committee, that the bill didn't have targets, and several members have suggested approaches to resolve this. And I hear the Minister saying that he isn't keen on this, but the committee clearly is, and I think the government may be in for a defeat, potentially on Murdo Fraser's or Daniel Johnson's target amendments today, which means that the minister will certainly have to come back at stage 3 if he doesn't like what gets passed today. Amendment 26 is my suggested approach because it's the tried and tested one from the Circular Economy Bill. However, I really would like the government to seriously consider including some mechanism for targets in the bill. As I say, something might get passed today, but if they don't like it, to propose something that they do like at stage 3. We all agree that reporting and monitoring were needed in this bill. Now that the government has proposed Amendment 101, I will not press my amendments 39 or 39A, but I will carefully review the government's amendments before stage 3 to ensure that the reporting is adequately covered. On 29A, B, 110, 111, 112. These are all my attempts to piggyback on what I thought was Daniel Johnson's excellent approach of requiring the Scottish Government to review specific legislation with respect to community wealth building and procurement in particular. Clearly, none of these reviews actually require primary legislation to take place, but the Scottish Government need to be willing to commit to this sort of comprehensive review so that the Scottish Parliament can remove legislative barriers that exist to community wealth building, particularly around procurement. And I'd like to hear from the government how they intend to undertake this.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to invite Richard Leonard to speak to Amendment 57 and any other amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener, and I'd like to speak to Amendments 57, 67 and 68. Now, I've been a member of this Parliament long enough to know that when we set targets, they're often observed in the breach rather than the observance, whether it's in the National Health Service or child poverty. And sometimes targets are dropped altogether if we look at emissions targets and climate change. But they do nonetheless provide a statement of intent. And for the avoidance of doubt, I've suggested that one of the targets we should include, an appropriate target, would be to see a doubling of the size of the worker co-op employee ownership sector by 2030, which is entirely in line with the government's own stated policy, going back to the Programme for Government 2021, which talks about a target of 500 employee-owned businesses registered in Scotland by 2030, up from around 200 in 2024. So I think it's a perfectly reasonable target to set. It's commensurate with the government's own stated position. It helps in our drive for data collection, which I think is widely understood to be important in the passing of this legislation. And it's also consistent with the approach which is taken by Parliament with the National Strategy for Economic Transformation. So I think Amendment 57 is entirely in keeping with that approach. Of the other two amendments in the group, these are about a review of legislation. A review of the legislation within the first year after royal assent has been granted. The first one, Amendment 67, calls for the government to consider business tax reliefs. As well as the small business bonus, there are other non-domestic rates exemptions already on the statute books for properties, for example, that contribute towards net zero targets. There is a right to buy relief for crofting communities, for example, upon conversion. So I'm simply suggesting that we take those existing provisions and look at how they might be applied to encourage the growth of the employee ownership sector. Can I also draw to the committee's attention that it is again included in that review report commissioned by the Scottish Government, which came out in September 24, the McEnroy Review Group, which said in its recommendation number 17 that the UK and Scottish governments should explore potential tax relief. And that's simply what this amendment seeks to do, to make sure that recommendation isn't lost or left behind. And similarly, and finally, Amendment 68 is a request to look at procurement rules. When legislation was passed in 2014-2015 in this Parliament on public procurement, seeking to transpose the 2014 EU Public Procurement Directive, there was some debate about whether there should be reserved contracts to certain sectors of the social economy. The Minister and I have worked together on a business in Larbert Haven Products, which is a supported business, which we've managed to keep afloat and try and win public contracts for. Supported businesses are covered by the existing legislation, but although the EU directive provided for mutualistic and social enterprises to win certain, or to be an option for reserved contracts, that option wasn't exercised by the Parliament when the regulations were set in 2015. All I'm calling for in this amendment is for that decision to be reviewed. Let's see if we can't look at a reserved contract status for certain types of social enterprise, employee ownership, worker cooperatives, which would be aligned with EU policy, but I think would also be the right thing to do. So, again, Amendment 68 is simply calling, within 12 months of royal assent, for the government to review procurement rules in the context of this amendment.
Thank you very much. And now I'd like to call Paul Sweeney to speak to Amendment 139 and any other amendments in the group. Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Convener. I propose that amendments 139, 141 supporting Sarah Boyack, 142 and 143 form part of the bill. Amendment 139 adds a key local accountability check to the bill by requiring the Scottish ministers to create key lines of accountability between community wealth building partnerships and local residents. It suggests options including citizens panels and community audits, and is a vital part, in my view, of making the bill one where local communities have continued buy-in and connection to projects and partnerships. And I think we've seen good examples of that occurring in other areas, such as community planning partnerships, charrettes, local place plans at local authority level, in developing urban planning models. So I think a similar model could take place in this regard, and I would commend the proposal to the committee. Amendment 141, in the name of Sarah Boyack, I support wholeheartedly. It actively promotes cooperatives, much in the spirit of what my colleague Richard Lerner just expressed. It's important that we grow the size of the cooperative economy in Scotland because it is an obvious and excellent example of how you retain wealth within a community due to its inherent structure of member ownership and the dividend being shared locally. And I think there are many examples on how that can be developed further in Scotland, and to weave that into the legislation explicitly would be obvious and a good suggestion. Amendment 142. It's an amendment which aims to broaden the ambition of the bill by using it as a catalyst for wider change within government procurement. It requires the Scottish Government to issue a report to review procurement and whether the current rules meet the requirements of community wealth building, where the interface is obviously a tension often with the need to procure on an international basis or an open basis, but actually are we being ambitious enough with exemptions, as my colleague Richard Lerner just expressed in relation to community-owned enterprises. We know, for example, the Mondragon cooperative structures in Spain, that there are established measures which meet are compliant with international procurement treaties and domestic procurement legislation, where we can make this work more effectively in Scotland. I'd like to test that further, and I think this is a good way of probing that opportunity. I think it's an important amendment because it turns the Community Well Building Bill into something that is truly going to change behaviours in procurement by embedding community wealth values across our supply chains. Community wealth is, of course, a journey, and this seems to be the natural next step to actually drive that into purchasing behaviours. Amendment 143 requires the Scottish Ministers to set out how community wealth building will be financed and funded. This adds accountability to the initiative while also clarifying where the financial burdens and barriers for initial set-up of community wealth building partnerships will take place. I think we've seen similar tensions exist in community asset transfers, for example, where the initial capital can be often challenging for communities to acquire, often under time-constrained disposal of assets, for example. So it would be useful to have clear opportunities expressed to how the communities can establish initial seed funding to build these sort of community wealth building approaches. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to call Sarah Boyack to speak to Amendment 108 and other amendments in the group. Sarah Boyack.
Thank you very much, Convener. I think these are really important amendments that a whole number of us have suggested to strengthen this legislation. The two amendments I have in the group strengthen the targets framework by embedding independent security and reinforcing the role of cooperatives in building fairer local economies. Amendment 108 introduces a requirement for a regular independent review of community wealth building. I think it's proportionate, to pick up the Minister's points earlier, because it would be every 5 years where there'd be an external assessment carried out, both in the National Community Wealth Building Statement and a representative sample of local action plans, because I think actually learning from both is absolutely critical. The review must publish its findings and recommendations, and then ministers could set out how they intend to respond or explain why they're not taking action. And that would basically mean that we'd review the effectiveness of this legislation every 5 years. So every term of the Parliament would actually have a proper review, and that would inform what ministers are doing. It would support local authorities and also support different community wealth building companies. So I think it'd be really, really important. The Amendment 141, and I very much thank Paul Sweeney for his support on this, it requires ministers to report regularly on the steps they're taking to promote cooperatives and to support cooperative development. It asks for clarity on what practical support and resources, including financial support, have been made available and how effective those measures have been. Because I think it's not enough just for us to say cooperatives are nice to have. Because we know we do actually have quite a lot of cooperatives, but where are the opportunities for more? What are the lessons to be learned? And personally, as a member of the Cooperative Party, I've actually seen some fantastic local co-ops, but it's how do you get more of them? How do you support people to set one up and make it work? And even in my own constituency as a member of the Edinburgh Solar Co-op, I've seen the benefits both of the investment, but also benefits to the council. So there's something about making sure that co-ops are a core part of the community wealth building approach, giving models of ownership and control that keep wealth rooted locally. And that ensures, through my amendment, that their promotion is not just incidental, but it's properly monitored, reported on, and taken seriously as part of delivering the aims of this bill. And I think what I'm really trying to do is to make the aspirations of this bill actually work in practice. And I think there's lots of good amendments in this section. I note the Minister's offered to discuss with us before stage 3. I hope my amendments will get cross-party support today because I think they're proportionate and also they will really help this bill actually being implemented and reviewed going forward. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much. No other members have indicated they'd like to speak in this grouping. Therefore, I'd invite Murdo Fraser to wind up and to press or withdraw Amendment 17. Murdo Fraser.
Thank you, Convener. I think it's been a very good discussion in relation to this grouping. And I was encouraged by what the Minister had to say. I think both the Minister and committee and indeed yourself, Convener, we're all more or less in the same place around where we are in terms of particularly this issue of public procurement and monitoring and evaluation, although there is more work to be done. I've reflected both on Amendment 17 in my name and Amendment 27 in yours. I think these could actually work together. I'm very happy for us to have further discussions with the Minister around this stuff. However, I believe in the negotiations, it's always better to go in with a strong hand of cards. And for that reason, I think if we could get these on the face of the bill at stage 2, that would lead to perhaps a more constructive discussion in advance of stage 3 in terms of the details. So I'm proposing to press Amendment 17 and would encourage committee members to support that. And I'll also be supporting Amendment 27 when we get to that point. Thank you.
Indeed, thank you. Therefore, the amendment is that the question is that Amendment 17 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. Therefore, no, we're not agreed. Apologies. Not only do I need to sort out my diction, I need to wash out my ears. We are not agreed. Therefore, we will divide. Can I ask all members in favour of Amendment 17 to please raise their hands now? And all those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any members abstaining? There were 5 members in favour, 4 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 17 has been agreed to. I call Amendment 128 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 84. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Move.
The question, therefore, is that Amendment 128 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
We are agreed. I call Amendment 18 in the name of Murdo Fraser, already debated with Amendment 84. Murdo Fraser, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question, therefore, is that Amendment 18 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask all those members in favour of Amendment 18 to please raise their hands now? And all those against? And any abstentions? There were 4 members in favour, 5 members against, 0 amendments. Therefore, Amendment 18 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 61 in the name of Richard Leonard, already debated with Amendment 84. Richard Leonard, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 61 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We're not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask all members in favour of Amendment 61 to please raise their hands now? And all members against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 3 members in favour, 6 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 61 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 91 in the name of Sarah Boyack, already debated with Amendment 84. Sarah Boyack, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 91 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
No. Yes.
We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask all members in favour of Amendment 91 to raise their hands now? Thank you. All members against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And all members wishing to abstain. There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 91 is not agreed to. I call Amendment 129 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated with Amendment 84. Paul Sweeney, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 129 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
No. Yes.
We're not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask all members in favour of Amendment 129 to please raise their hands now? Thank you. All members against, please raise their hands. And any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 129 is not agreed to. I call Amendment 38 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 84. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 38 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. Yes. We're not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask all members in favour of Amendment 38 to please raise their hands? All members against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 3 members in favour, 6 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 38 is not agreed to. I call Amendment 92 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 84. Minister to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 92 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. I call Amendment 93 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 84. Minister to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 93, so there was a blank page of my script. The question is that Amendment 93 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. I call Amendment 25 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 85. Can I ask Lorna Slater to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 25 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. Yes. We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask members in favour of Amendment 25 to raise their hands? And all those against, please raise their hands. And any abstentions? There were 3 members in favour, 6 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 25 is not agreed to. Given that we are now just have 2 groupings left, and the next one is going to be about the specification of named bodies, I'm going to suggest that we suspend for 10 minutes and that we reconvene shortly after 11 o'clock. 10-minute suspension. Thank you. All okay?
Very good.
Thank you very much. We now move on to the next grouping, and I call Amendment 94 in the name of the Minister, grouped with amendments as shown in the groupings. Minister, to move Amendment 94 and to speak to all amendments in the group. Minister.
Thank you, Convener. The bill divides public bodies into two categories, relevant public bodies and specified public bodies, and places different obligations on each category. This approach reflects the varying levels of influence that different organisations exert on local and regional economic development. It's considered the most proportionate way to ensure that those bodies with the most significant economic levers, such as employment, procurement and investment, play the greatest role in developing and implementing community wealth building actions. So I would urge members to support the amendments in my name. The government position is not to support any other amendments in this group, and I'll set out why on both counts. Amendment 94 relates to Amendment 106 in Group 11, which places a requirement to consult both the relevant and specified public bodies in relation to guidance as recommended by the Delegated Powers and Law Reform Committee. Amendment 94 ensures that the same meaning of relevant public bodies applies to the consultation duty. Amendment 95 in my name is necessary in order that the various colleges who form part of the University of Highlands and Islands are under a duty to participate in community wealth building partnerships, and this issue of the specific governance arrangements with regard to UHI arose during stage 1. Amendment 116 in my name removes Scottish Forestry from the list of specified public bodies, bringing it into line with other executive agencies with regard to how this legislation relates to them. The activities of executive agencies and their contribution to community wealth building will be covered by the Scottish Minister's statement. Amendments 113 and 115 in my name are technical in nature, involving substitution of Scottish Canals in the schedule with British Waterways Board, the correct legal name for Scottish Canals. And Amendment 114 in my name adds the Crofton Commission to the list of specified bodies who must pay due regard to the guidance published by Scottish ministers. With the influence the Commission can exert on rural communities, I would urge members to support this amendment. Turning to the other amendments in the group, adding bodies such as Crown Estate Scotland, housing associations, community councils, ferry operators and universities to the group of relevant bodies would impose disproportionate duties, duplicate existing governance or conflict with reserved legislation. Many of these organisations already engage voluntarily or through existing frameworks and local partnerships, which is the most efficient and proportionate approach. And while I understand the thinking behind Amendments 147 and 149 in Paul Sweeney's name, I do not think that the two regulatory bodies whose influence on the organisations they regulate is limited with regard to community wealth building specifically need to be subject to any obligation set out in this bill with reference to the community wealth building guidance. So I would urge members to support the amendments in my name and resist those who would introduce unnecessarily complexity to the legislation or for specific organisations. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you. And I'd like to call Richard Leonard to speak to Amendment 62 and other amendments in the group. Richard Leonard.
Thank you very much, Convener. Amendment 62 seeks to add Cooperative Development Scotland as a relevant body because it remains the Cooperative Development Agency for Scotland, established in 2006. It is under the wing of Scottish Enterprise, which was the Minister's defence not to include it in amendments last week. But I do think when we are talking about community wealth building, cooperative development is absolutely central to it. I also mentioned last week that the staffing levels at CDS at Scottish Enterprise had shrunk and shrunk and shrunk over the years. So it's now down to a bare minimum of, I think, 1.5 members of staff. I compared that to the Wales Cooperative Development Centre, Cwmpas, which has got 80 staff working on cooperative development. So I just suggest that that's something that the government needs to reflect on, and I would ask this committee to take into account. The two other bodies, of course, yes.
I think that's a really powerful point, and that statistic is actually quite shocking. If it's not Cooperative Development Scotland, what other organisation is going to do this work? Because we've got lots of advocacy organisations, but what about an actual government organisation that's there to deliver?
Absolutely. And had the bill had a wider scope, then I would have put forward amendments that would have called for Cooperative Development Scotland to be established on a statutory footing itself. Back in the days when it was established, there was some discussion about whether it should be the subject of primary legislation. But I think in terms of getting things moving more quickly, it was decided to set it up within Scottish Enterprise without legislating for it explicitly. So there is some history to this. The two other organisations which I think need to be included in this section of the bill are the Scottish National Investment Bank. And again, I would return to the report from September 2024 on inclusive democratic business models, which contained recommendation number 11 in that review. I quote, that the government should grow the role of the Scottish National Investment Bank to intentionally and specifically support inclusive democratic business models. I also note that this committee's own deliberations at stage 1 included findings which you reached. Paragraph 82 of the committee's report says the bill and its accompanying documents do not set out the criteria used to determine relevant public bodies. Consequently, the committee was unclear on how the Scottish Government's list was developed, which was a view also reflected by the committee in its stage 1 report, paragraph 89, which is a recommendation where the committee asks the government to consider the organisations identified as having been omitted from the list of relevant public bodies and to provide the rationale for their exclusion. The committee is particularly interested in understanding the reasons for not including the Scottish National Investment Bank, given its prominent role in supporting economic development. And I would ask the question, how is Skills Development Scotland a relevant body, whereas the Scottish National Investment Bank is not? My final amendment in this category, Convener, is Amendment 64, and that is an amendment that would add local government pension schemes to the legislation. If you look at, for example, the Strathclyde Local Government Pension Scheme, a defined contribution scheme, it's worth £31.3 billion. The assets it manages are to the value of £31.3 billion. Local government pension schemes across Scotland are variously valued, but one valuation I saw was that they are worth £60 billion, which is the equivalent of an entire year's budget for the Scottish Government. So a glimpse at the possibilities that local government pension schemes could offer has been provided by Preston Council, which of course is one of the pioneering community wealth building councils, which has pioneered some local investment. I would also reflect in Falkirk in 2015, the local government pension scheme there took out a significant investment in housing as an example of reinvesting in the local economy rather than simply investing in derivatives in the Far East, which is often what happens. Absolutely.
I thank Mr Leonard for giving way and an interesting conversation, and I share his views in many regards around about the use of local government pension schemes. I'm not quite so sure it fits in with this bill, but I think we should point out that while Falkirk did invest in housing, they removed themselves from it quite quickly, which I think was to their detriment. I agree that government here, Parliament should look at more in depth at how local government pension schemes are invested. I'm not entirely sure that this is the place for that, but I'm willing to have a further conversation with Mr Leonard around about those investments, because I think they are important and we're not getting the best out of them for communities in Scotland.
Thank you, and I'm very happy to take up that offer of further discussions up with Mr Stewart, who brings ministerial experience as well as constituency experience to this subject. But for me, I do think it's appropriate because community wealth building is about place, and it's about a local and a regional focus. It's about keeping wealth raised locally, invested locally, which local government pension schemes could do. And I do think, and I've long held the view, that pension funds are a huge engine for investment, but are largely a sleeping giant, and I think should be awakened. And I think this legislation provides us with an opportunity to bring that about. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to invite Lorna Slater to speak to Amendment 96 and other amendments in the group. Lorna Slater.
Thank you, Convener. There is a lack of clarity about who is on what list here. It isn't going to be practical to get everyone around the table to develop these action plans, so that group necessarily needs to be small enough to be functional. But it isn't at all clear to me what criteria members of either list are being chosen by, whether that's by purchasing power, land ownership, or other unspecified ways in which they might have local influence. Although I think it's right that Scottish Enterprise is on the list, I would like to flag a concern that I had when we had the 3 enterprise agencies in front of this committee to talk about the bill. Both the South of Scotland Enterprise Agency and the Highlands and Islands Enterprise Agency appeared to understand community wealth building and their role in it. But the CEO of Scottish Enterprise did not have a clear grasp on it, thinking that bringing in foreign investment and high-paying jobs was community wealth building when asked. It isn't. That's not what community wealth building is. Those might be worthy goals, but they are absolutely not what community wealth building is. So some clear guidance on this to Scottish Enterprise will be required if they're to participate fully in developing these action plans and understanding the consequences of their decisions. Given the limited funding available to support community wealth building as an endeavour, I think it is vital to have the owners of assets around the table so that they can be part of the discussion about how these public assets can be used for the public good. Think of that, instead of putting money in, you bring the people who have the wealth to the table. And that is why I am proposing amendments 96, 97 and 98. Forestry Land Scotland is the largest landowner in Scotland. Crown Estate owns the foreshore, which is critical for marine biodiversity and offshore energy, including potentially community energy schemes. And Network Rail owns considerable vacant and derelict land, particularly in the West and Central Scotland. Bringing these bodies around the table would allow their extensive assets to be used for community wealth building. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you. I'd now like to bring in Paul Sweeney to speak to Amendment 99 and other amendments in the group. Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Convener. I have a fairly extensive set of amendments in this group, 18 in total, I think, which encompass a number of organisations. I'll start with Amendment 99. The rationale for why some major public bodies have been omitted from the list of relevant public bodies seems to be unclear, as colleagues have already expressed. The proposed amendment here is to insert the Scottish National Investment Bank, a national park authority established by virtue of a designation order under the National Parks Act. Scottish Forestry and Land Scotland and the Crown Estate Scotland. I think there is a strong rationale for the Scottish National Investment Bank, National Park Authorities, Forestry and Land Scotland, Scottish Forestry and the Crown Estate in Scotland to... Happy to give way. Yeah.
I spoke to the National Park Authorities. They are not interested in being on that list of relevant bodies. I don't know if the member spoke to them.
I've been engaged through Community Land Scotland primarily in developing these amendments. I haven't engaged with the National Parks directly. However, I suppose they have a view on it. I suppose we as parliamentarians can take a view about whether they ought to be or not. And it's a matter of judgment for individual members. Certainly, I think there's a rationale for it, which merits further discussion. So they should be, in my view, included in the list of relevant public bodies rather than specified public bodies due to the size of the land holdings they have a controlling interest in, their influence over land management, as well as the significant financial resources they are responsible for managing. Amendment 130 inserts community councils. This amendment adds those to relevant public bodies included in Section 5. It is vital that if community well building is to be implemented coherently, it must be acted on by all public bodies, and the Community Council is the most granular unit of democracy in our country. Happy to, yes. On that point,
I'm grateful to Paul Sweeney for giving way, and I'm interested in this. My experience of community councils is that they are, in many cases, short on resource, really struggle to deal with the business in front of them, comprised entirely of volunteers. Does he really think community councils have got the capacity to produce action plans?
Well, it's not that they necessarily would produce action plans, but they certainly would be involved in the development of action plans, and I think they ought to be cited here in that respect. I mentioned before the parallel with urban planning and developing community well-building plans. So certainly in my community in Springburn, the Community Council in Springburn was essential in winning grant funding to develop a charrette and a local place plan, which has now informed the city development plan. So, you know, in that respect, I think there are instances, though I agree they are extremely underfunded generally, and they are the kind of Cinderella of our democracy. You know, some community councils are very well attended, very well resourced. It's just often a lottery of who's available and who turns up. But in some instances, they do demonstrate value, and I think it's worth certainly, you know, at least highlighting that in the bill here. And perhaps that would create an impetus for greater resourcing of community councils. Amendment 131 inserts community planning partnerships to those relevant public bodies, including Section 5. I think it's vital that if community wellbeing is to be implemented coherently, then community planning partnerships should be involved. Amendment 132 inserts ferry operators. Again, for a similar reason, they are essential, many lifeline services to communities, and they are a key wealth generator. Amendment 133 inserts housing associations and cooperatives as acting as registered social landlords. I think it's clear that the housing association and co-op model is more than just a pure housing provider. It is often a central anchor in many communities, often in deprived communities, and they often form a backstop, particularly when local authority services are withdrawn, whether it's bulk uplifts, whether it's developing regeneration projects, whether it's resourcing communities in different ways, and often that isn't properly recognised. And I think that by adding housing associations and cooperatives, it would be useful to give them that status. Also propose in Amendment 134 integration joint boards established by virtue of Section 9 of the Public Bodies Joint Working Scotland Act. Again, we've seen often integration joint boards taking decisions which are harmful to community wealth and are driven primarily by budgetary considerations, short-term financial constraints, and actually drive more costs into public services overall. So I think giving them that remit would be useful. Amendment 135 also inserts local employability partnerships. 136 Marine Scotland, 137 ScotRail, 138 universities, 144 Forestry Land Scotland, 145 housing association cooperatives acting as registered social landlords again, Marine Scotland under Amendment 146, 147 the Office of the Scottish Charities Regulator, Amendment 140 public sector pension funds. My colleague Mitchell Rennie spoke more substantively to that rationale. Amendment 149 the Scottish Housing Regulator. Those who have certainly been involved with the Scottish Housing Regulator know they have presided over a significant decline in community-owned housing associations and cooperatives in Scotland since they were implemented in 2010. And the clear rationale there is obvious that if they had a remit to promote community wealth building, then that would support the housing sector in driving community wealth building. Also suggest the Scottish Prison Service under Amendment 150, particularly around some of the work that's been done, for example, at Barlinnie around community enterprise and supporting prisoners in developing skills and spinning that out into the community. I think there's an opportunity there. Amendment 151 suggests Social Security Scotland. And finally, Amendment 152 suggests Transport Scotland be included.
Thank you very much. No other members have indicated they wish to speak in this grouping, so I now turn to the Minister to wind up and to formally press or withdraw Amendment 94. Minister.
Yeah, I think it's just worth reflecting on the list of bodies that members want to include, and important to recognise that the relevant bodies, the Community Wealth Building Partners, already have the ability to invite specified bodies to participate in preparing the plan. That's an important piece of this. It's a bit important to get the proportionality right on this and not have too much requirements on those bodies. Many of them that are listed aren't distinct legally from Scottish ministers anyway, because they're directorates of government or their bodies are. Indeed, yeah.
I thank the Minister for giving way, and I agree with him that a lot of the amendments mention bodies, some of which we've heard don't really want to be involved in this, and beyond that, I don't see the scope for some of the bodies and some of the amendments in all of this. Beyond the bill itself, though, I think that Mr Leonard has a really good point around about the pension funds. I wonder if the Minister would commit to looking at how we can better deal with pension funds, not only in terms of community wealth building, but in investment in Scotland, because it is, in my opinion, an untapped resource. And beyond that, it is quite galling to see pension funds, for example, investing in wind farms in Vietnam, not that I've got anything against Vietnam, when they could be doing similar here and likely get a better and less risky return. So I wonder if the Minister would be open to further conversations on that front.
So I think first of all, in terms of this bill, I think that the member's right, it doesn't fit within what this bill is seeking to do, and there's there are potential issues around about how it would conflict with the current duties on scheme managers, administering authorities, fiduciary duties and so on that would need to be explored. But with regards to the issue more broadly, I absolutely agree with them. I think that there is huge potential there. I have engaged with local authority pension schemes in that regard, and it'd be the Deputy First Minister who would be leading on that work as part of her investment responsibilities. But I think the member makes a very valuable point. Work has already been done in that in government, and more is being done.
Indeed. I'm very grateful to the Minister for giving way. I mean, further to that, and I think it's interesting that he mentions the work of the Deputy First Minister and investment and so on. And indeed, I wonder, because he also rightly mentions fiduciary duties. You know, ultimately, the first duty of the trustees will be to ensure that the interests of the members are overseen. But that does not stop the Scottish Government from essentially trying to encourage, present investment opportunities here that may well be absolutely the sort of thing that would be in the interest of the members, but also actually represent the interests of local communities and community wealth building. It is such a thought, something that could either be included in future investment summits or indeed using an investment summit model or those sorts of approaches to encourage the maximum investment of our pension funds in our local communities.
Yes, and we're obviously going on a bit of a tangent here, but I think it's a very valuable point. For example, the Invest in Scotland portal just been recently launched. It's got a number of investment opportunities on there that have been pulled together by government officials working with partners, and many of those would fit the profile, I've no doubt, of that longer-term patient investment that would suit pension schemes, local authority pension schemes. So, as I said, there is work happening there. It's not something I'm directly leading on, but I have been involved in the fringes of it. But I think it's there is absolutely potential there to do more, and more has been done in that regard.
Thank you.
So I think that's I've said all I need to say with regards to the winding up there, convener. So thank you very much.
Therefore, the question is that Amendment 94 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. I call Amendment 95 in the name of the Minister. Already debated with my Amendment 94. Minister to move formally.
Moved. And just for the record, I also moved 94. I'm not sure I did that formally already.
Well, I think we take it that when you're speaking when I call you that it's moved. But yes, thank you very much just for that clarity. The question is that Amendment 95 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. I call Amendment 62 in the name of Richard Leonard. Already debated with Amendment 94. Richard Leonard to move or not move?
Moved, convener.
The question is that Amendment 62 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask all members in favour of Amendment 62 to raise their hands now? And all those against, please raise their hands. And any amendments? Abstentions? I thought I was going to avoid making that mistake this week. We had 3 members in favour, 6 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 62 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 63 in the name of Richard Leonard, already debated with Amendment 94. Richard Leonard to move or not move?
Moved, convener.
The question is that Amendment 63 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask all members in favour of Amendment 63 to please raise their hands? Thank you. All members against, please raise their hands. Thank you. Any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 63 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 64 in the name of Richard Leonard, already debated with Amendment 94. Richard Leonard, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 64 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. All members in favour of Amendment 64, please raise their hands. Thank you. All members against, please raise their hands. And any abstentions? We had 3 members in favour, 6 members against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 64 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 96 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 94. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 96 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. All members in favour of Amendment 96, please raise their hands. Thank you. All members against, please raise their hands. Thank you. Any abstentions? There were 3 members in favour, 6 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 96 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 97 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 94. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 97 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We're not agreed. Can I ask all members in favour of Amendment 97 to please raise their hands? Thank you. All members against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? Thank you. There were 3 members in favour, 6 against, 0 abstentions. Amendment 97 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 98 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 94. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 98 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We're not agreed. We'll divide. Can I ask members in favour of Amendment 98 to please raise their hands? Thank you. Members against, please raise their hands. Thank you. Any abstentions? There were 3 members in favour, 6 members against, 0 abstentions. Amendment 98 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 99 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated with Amendment 94. Paul Sweeney, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 99 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We're not agreed. We'll divide. Can I ask members in favour of Amendment 99 to please raise their hands now? All those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 99 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 130 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated with Amendment 94. Paul Sweeney, to move or not moved?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 130 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We're not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask members in favour of Amendment 130 to please raise their hands? Thank you. All those members against? Thank you. Any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 130 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 131 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated. Paul Sweeney, to move or not moved?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 131 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. Yes. We're not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask members in favour of 131 to please raise their hands? Those members against, please raise their hands. Thank you. Any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Amendment 131 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 132 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated. Paul Sweeney, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 132 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We're not agreed. We'll divide. Those members in favour of 132, please raise their hands. Those members against, please raise their hands. Thank you. Any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Amendment 132 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 133 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated. Paul Sweeney, to move or not moved?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 133 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed. We'll divide. Members in favour of 133, please raise their hands now. Thank you. Those members against, please raise their hands. Thank you. Any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Amendment 133 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 134 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated. Can I ask Paul Sweeney to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 134 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We're not agreed. We'll divide. Those in favour of 134, please raise their hands. Thank you. Those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. Any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 134 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 135 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated. Can I ask Paul Sweeney to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 135 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We're not agreed. Can those members in favour of 135, yes, those members in favour of 135, please raise their hands. Those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Amendment 135 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 136 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated, to move. Paul Sweeney to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that 136 be agreed to. Are we agreed? No. Those in favour of 136, please raise their hands. Thank you. Those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. Any abstentions? Thank you. There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Amendment 136 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 137 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated. Paul Sweeney to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that 137 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We're not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Those in favour of 137, please raise their hands. Thank you. Those against, please raise their hands. Any abstentions? Thank you. There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions, and therefore Amendment 137 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 138 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated. Paul Sweeney to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 138 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We're not agreed. We'll divide. Those in favour of 138, please raise their hands. Thank you. Those against, please raise their hands. Any abstentions? Thank you. There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 138 has not been agreed to. The question is that Section 5 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The question is that Section 6 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. I call Amendment 27 in the name of some character named Daniel Johnson, already debated with Amendment 17, and I shall move the amendment. The question is that that Amendment 27 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. All those in favour of Amendment 27, please raise their hands. Thank you. All those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? Thank you. There were 5 members in favour, 4 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 27 has been agreed to. I call Amendment 65 in the name of Richard Leonard, already debated with Amendment 84. Richard Leonard to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 65 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask all those in favour of 65 to please raise their hands? Those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Amendment 65 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 100 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 84. Minister to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 100 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. I call Amendment 19 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 7. Lorna Slater to move or not move?
Not move.
The question is that Section 7 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Yes. I call Amendment 101 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 17. Minister to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 101 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. Sorry, just to clarify, that's Amendment 101 has been agreed to. I call Amendment 102 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated with Amendment 6. Paul Sweeney to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 102 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Those in favour of 102, please raise their hands now. Those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. Any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 102 has not been agreed to. The question is that Section 8 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. I call Amendment 20 in the name of Murdo Fraser, already debated with Amendment 17. Murdo Fraser to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 20 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. All those in favour of Amendment 20, please raise their hands.
Sorry.
Thank you. I have very poor peripheral vision.
Yeah.
All those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? Thank you. There were 5 members in favour, 4 members against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 20 has been agreed to. I call Amendment 26 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 17. Lorna Slater to move or not move?
Move.
So I now need to call Amendment 26A in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 17. Lorna Slater to move or not move?
Not move, and convener, I don't intend to move any of the 26 A, B, C, D or E, but I do intend to move 26.
Yes, and indeed you've already moved it. Sorry? Oh, just need to just for clarity, 26A is not being moved, 26B, 26C, 26D, 26E.
I will not move any of those, convener.
Those are not being moved. Therefore, the question is that Amendment 26 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
No. Yes.
We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask all those in favour of Amendment 26 to please raise their hands? All those against, please raise their hands. And any abstentions? There were 3 members in favour, 6 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 26 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 39 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 17. Lorna Slater to move or not move?
Not move.
Okay. Amendment 39 is not being moved. Yeah. Therefore, I call Amendment 57 in the name of Richard Leonard, already debated with Amendment 17. Richard Leonard to move or not move?
Move, convener.
The question is that Amendment 57 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed. Therefore, I would ask all members in favour of Amendment 57 to please raise their hands now. All those against? Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 57 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 139 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated with Amendment 17. Paul Sweeney to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 139 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are not agreed. Therefore, we'll divide. Can I ask members in favour of 139 to please raise their hands now? Those against? Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 3 members in favour, 6 members against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 139 has not been agreed to. We now move to the final groupings, and I call Amendment 103 in the name of Paul Sweeney, grouped with Amendments 104, 105, 69, 66, 140 and 106. Paul Sweeney to move Amendment 103 and to speak to all amendments in the group. Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Convener. In proposing Amendment 103, it's to insert the role of the Scottish Ministers, Community Wellbuilding Partnerships, community bodies, private businesses and landowners. The bill as currently drafted does not sufficiently draw in the private sector or fully reflect the important role that community organisations already play. Mechanisms and intentions are needed to draw the private sector into community well-building practices, as private interest will be a key driver in achieving community well-building aims. Without this, there is a risk of ongoing economic leakage, with wealth continuing to be extracted from local areas. Similarly, community bodies are not sufficiently recognised within the current bill. The committee recognised at stage 1 the vital importance of empowered communities and advancing community wealth building, drawing on successes in Alloa and Irvine. There should therefore be a formal recognition of third sector and community groups as essential delivery partners in shaping and delivering community wealth building action plans. While large public bodies should be important drivers of community wealth building, community trusts and community businesses are already drivers of community wealth building. They are existing important organisations as properly constituted entities which employ staff and have strong local presences in their areas. This becomes particularly significant in areas poorly serviced by the public sector. As such, this amendment seeks to include private interests, landowners and community bodies on the face of the bill. This can begin to recognise the contribution of community organisations and indicate that private companies and landowners are subject to statutory regulation and guidance to ensure that these groups are monitored and kept accountable for community building goals. Once this bill is enacted, guidance should be developed akin to the land rights and responsibilities statement for private businesses to use when developing their economic, social and governance credentials to ensure that they are dovetailing with community wealth building efforts in their local area. And these other amendment 140 in this group seeks to fully integrate the work of the Scottish National Investment Bank yet again into community wealth building, allowing for a much more holistic approach to national investment and guaranteeing that community wealth values are implemented across the Scottish economy.
Thank you very much. I'd like to call Sarah Boyack to speak to Amendment 104 and other amendments in the group.
Convener, I think these amendments are really important. My amendments 104 and 5 strengthen the guidance provisions by ensuring that ministers must provide clear guidance, not just on the statement and action plans in general, but on all the measures that they contain. Amendment 104 adds a requirement that guidance must cover the community wealth building statement, including every measure set out under section 1.3. That ensures that public bodies have clarity in how each element of the statement should be interpreted and implemented. And Amendment 105 does the same for local action plans, requiring guidance on all measures included under section 5.5. That helps ensure consistency across local authorities and supports effective delivery on the ground. I think there's a key issue about making this legislation successful, and guidance from ministers will be absolutely critical in that, to support local authorities, to support community wealth building, both in terms of community-owned projects and in terms of small businesses and bigger companies. So I think it's really important. I also want to say I support Amendment 69 in the name of Lorna Slater, because it highlights community-owned renewable energy and the skills and supply chains that we're not seeing the development on that we could do. And I think by adding Lorna Slater's amendment on the face of the bill, that would help us. And I think I also support the Minister's Amendment 106, because again it's about strengthening guidance and about making sure that local authorities and specified public bodies get the right guidance, the right support to help implement this legislation. And I think Paul Sweeney spoke very articulately in support of his amendments. And I see there's also one from Richard Leonard, again, strengthening the impact of public sector organisations in actually delivering on this really important legislation. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to ask Lorna Slater to speak to Amendment 69 and other amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. As Sarah Boyack has said, Amendment 69 is about facilitating and supporting the generation, circulation and retention of wealth in local and regional economies through the development of community-owned renewable energy skills and supply chains associated with renewable energy. I can also support Amendments 105 and 106 in this group, but not the others, particularly those that refer to the Scottish National Investment Bank for reasons that I've set out previously.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to call Richard Leonard to speak to Amendment 66 and other amendments in the group.
Thank you very much, Convener. Amendment 66 does seek to add steps to the guidance which the Scottish National Investment Bank and the enterprise agencies should report on the steps that they will take to encourage and support the development of employee-owned businesses. And my reference point for that, again, is the long-standing commitment to double the size of the employee-owned sector in the Scottish economy. As this is my last amendment, I'd just like to make two or three final points. One is that in the Stage 1 debate, the Minister used the expression over again about what is right and proportionate. I think this Amendment 66 is right and proportionate, as have been the other amendments which I've put forward. None of them have been aimed at making the bill longer. They have been aimed at making the bill better. And in the end, the fundamental question is, will this legislation bring about change? And that will be, for me, the litmus test of the Community Wealth Building Act 2026. And I think we've still got time between now and Stage 3 and that final passage of the legislation to see what we can do to strengthen the bill and to make it a better one. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much. I would like to invite the Minister to speak to Amendment 106 and other amendments in this group. Minister.
Thank you, Convener. Amendment 106 in my name arises from a Delegated Powers and Law Reform Committee recommendation highlighted in the Stage 1 report. The amendment introduces a requirement for Scottish ministers to consult with members of community wealth building partnerships and specified bodies before issuing guidance. Amendment 105 in Sarah Boyack's name achieves helpful symmetry between the content of guidance and what community wealth building partnerships may include in their action plans. Amendment 69 highlights the development of community-owned renewable energy and skills and supply chain associated with renewable energy as something that Ministers' guidance must cover. As the bill already provides that action plans can include measures facilitating or supporting community ownership, I think ministerial guidance on action plans could already cover this issue. However, as amendment is congruent with the government's policy intention, our position is to support it. On Amendment 66, this amendment is not required as enterprise agencies listed are relevant public bodies, and so will have to have regard to the guidance when preparing, jointly with others, a community wealth building action plan. The Scottish National Investment Bank is a specified public body listed in the schedule, and so will have to have due regard to the guidance when preparing its corporate plan. In addition, ministers in guidance would not seek to include steps a body will take. This implies ministerial direction or control, which I do not think would be appropriate. Finally, in this group, the Government does not consider that Amendment 140 is required. SNIB, through its missions and articles of association, are required to take areas that support community wealth building into account and will be subject to the due regard duty in relation to community wealth building guidance as a specified body. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to invite Paul Sweeney to wind up and to press or withdraw Amendment 103.
Thank you, Convener. I think these amendments are generally useful and add great strength to the bill, and I commend them to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The question, therefore, is that Amendment 103 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We're not agreed. Therefore, we'll divide. All those in favour of 103, please raise their hands. All those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 103 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 104 in the name of Sarah Boyack, already debated with Amendment 103. Sarah Boyack, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 104 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
We're not agreed, therefore we'll divide. All those in favour of 104, please raise their hands. Thank you. All those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? Thank you. There were 2 in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 104 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 105 in the name of Sarah Boyack. Already debated. Sarah Boyack, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 105 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. I call Amendment, therefore Amendment 105 has been agreed to. I call Amendment 69 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 103. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 69 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
Sorry, are we all agreed?
Yes.
No, we're not. Therefore, we'll divide. Can I ask all those in favour of Amendment 69 to please raise their hands? Thank you. And all those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 7 members in favour, 2 members against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 69 has been agreed to. I call Amendment 66 in the name of Richard Leonard, already debated with Amendment 103. Richard Leonard, to move or not move?
Moved.
Thank you. The question, therefore, is that Amendment 66 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We're not agreed, therefore we'll divide. All those in favour of 66, please raise their hands. All those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 66 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 140 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated. Paul Sweeney, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 140 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We're not agreed, therefore we'll divide. All those in favour of 140, please raise their hands. All those against? Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 140 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 106 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 103. Minister, to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 106 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. Amendment 106 has been agreed to. I call Amendment 107 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 94. Minister, to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 107 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Amendment 107 has been agreed. The question is that Section 9 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. I call Amendment 109 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 94. Minister, to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 109 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Amendment 109 has been agreed to. The question is that Section 10 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Section 10 is agreed. I call Amendment 113 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 94. Minister, to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 113 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Amendment 113 has been agreed to. I call Amendment 114 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 94. Minister, to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 114 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Amendment 114 has been agreed to. I call Amendment 144 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated with Amendment 94. Paul Sweeney, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 144 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Those in favour of 144, please raise their hands. Thank you. All those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. Any abstentions? I'll get there in the end. There were 3 members in favour, 6 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 144 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 145 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated. Paul Sweeney, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 145 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We're not agreed. We'll divide. All those in favour of 145, please raise their hands. Thank you. All those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. Any Abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 145 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 146 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated. Paul Sweeney to move or not move.
Moved.
Question is that what Amendment 146 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Those in favour of 146, please raise their hands. Thank you. Those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. Any abstentions? There were 3 members in favour, 6 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 146 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 147 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated. Paul Sweeney to move or not move.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 147 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We're not agreed. We'll divide. Those in favour of 147, please raise their hands. Those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. Any abstentions? Thank you. There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 147 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 148 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated. Paul Sweeney to move or not move. The question is that Amendment 148 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We're not agreed. We'll divide. Those in favour of 148, please raise their hands. Those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. Any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 148 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 115 in the name of the Minister, already debated. Minister to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 115 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Amendment 115 is agreed to. I call Amendment 116 in the name of the Minister, already debated. Minister to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 116 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. Amendment 116 is agreed to. I call Amendment 149 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated. Paul Sweeney to move or not move.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 149 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We're not agreed. We'll divide. Those in favour of 149, please raise their hands. Thank you. Those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 149 is not agreed to. I call Amendment 150 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated with Amendment 94. Paul Sweeney to move or not move.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 150 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We're not agreed. We'll divide. Those in favour of 150, please raise their hands. Those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 150 is not agreed to. I call Amendment 151 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated. Paul Sweeney to move or not move.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 151 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We're not agreed. We'll divide. Those in favour of 151, please raise their hands. Thank you. Those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. Any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 151 is not agreed to. I call Amendment 152 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated. Paul Sweeney to move or not move.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 152 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We're not agreed. We'll divide. Those in favour of 152, please raise their hands. Thank you. Those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. Any abstentions? There were 3 members in favour, 6 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 152 is not agreed to. The question is that the schedule be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The schedule is agreed. I call Amendment 28 in my name, already debated with Amendment 17. I move Amendment 28. The question is, therefore, is Amendment 28 to be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed. We'll divide. Those in favour of Amendment 28, please raise their hands. Those against, please raise their hands. And any abstentions? There were 3 members in favour, 6 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 28 is not agreed to. I call Amendment 29, again in my name, already debated. I move Amendment 29. Yeah. So I now move to 29A, already debated with Amendment 17. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Not move.
Likewise, Amendment 29B in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 17. Lorna Slater.
Not move.
Therefore, I press Amendment 29.
Or
The
would you? I don't know.
we all okay? Yeah, that's fine. Good. I'm just keeping myself straight. The question is that Amendment 29 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. Yes. We're not agreed, therefore we'll divide. All those in favour of 29, please raise their hands. Thank you. All those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. Any abstentions? Thank you. There were 5 members in favour, 4 members against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 29 is agreed to. I call Amendment 67 in the name of Richard Leonard, already debated with Amendment 17. Richard Leonard, to move or not moved?
Moved, convener.
The question is that Amendment 67 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We're not agreed. We'll divide. Those in favour of 67, please raise their hands. Those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. Any abstentions? Thank you. There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 67 is not agreed to. I call Amendment 68 in the name of Richard Leonard, already debated. Richard Leonard, to move or not move?
Moved, convener.
The question is that Amendment 68 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We're not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Those in favour of Amendment 68, please raise their hands. Thank you. Those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 3 members in favour, 6 members against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 68 is not agreed to. I call Amendment 108 in the name of Sarah Boyack, already debated with Amendment 17. Sarah Boyack, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 108 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
No. Yes.
We're not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Those in favour of 108, please raise their hands. Those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. Any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 members against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 108 is not agreed to. I call Amendment 110 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Not move.
Amendment 110 is not moved. I call Amendment 111 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated. Lorna Slater, to move or not moved?
Not move.
111 is not moved. I call Amendment 112 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Not move.
112 is not moved. I call Amendment 141 in the name of Sarah Boyack, already debated with Amendment 17. Sarah Boyack, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 141 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We're not agreed. We'll divide. Those in favour of 141, please raise their hands. Thank you. Those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? Thank you. There were 2 members in favour, 7 members against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 141 is not agreed to. I call Amendment 142 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated with Amendment 17. Paul Sweeney, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 142 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We're not agreed, and therefore we'll divide. Those in favour of 142, please raise their hands. Thank you. Those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. Any abstentions? There were 5 members in favour, 4 members against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 142 has been agreed to. I call Amendment 143 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated with Amendment 17. Paul Sweeney, to move or not move?
Moved, Convener.
The question is that Amendment 143 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We're not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask all those in favour of 143 to please raise their hands? And those against, please raise their hands. And any abstentions? There were 4 members in favour, 5 members against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 143 has not been agreed to. The question is that Section 11 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
Section 11 is agreed. I call Amendment 117 in the name of Sarah Boyack, already debated with Amendment 30. Sarah Boyack, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 117 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
We are agreed. Amendment 117 is agreed to. The question is that Section 12 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Section 12 is agreed to. The question is that Sections 13 and 14 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
The question is that the long title be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
That ends stage 2 consideration of the bill, and I thank members for our efficient work over today and last week, and can I also thank the Minister for all his contributions. And with that, we move into private session. Thank you very much.